Leiria Eros Wisteria stands amidst falling petals in a bright town square.
Excitement ripples through the crowd as townspeople cheer for the Grand Duke's arrival.
Anthem rides a white horse through the street, commanding attention with his presence.
The stoic commander passes through the town as falling petals drift around him.
His dark hair and sharp features reflect a lifetime of discipline and duty.
He scans his surroundings with the focused intensity of hawk-like golden eyes. Narrative text praises his handsome features and intelligent gaze as he moves forward. Shock paralyzes Leiria as she recognizes the rider as Anthem Isaac Vergerhines.
Hoping to avoid notice, Leiria hides behind a passerby as her heart races.
A sudden tug on the reins brings the white horse to a halt.
Panic flares as Leiria wonders if Anthem noticed her hiding in the crowd. Anthem looks back suspiciously while Leiria convinces herself he couldn't have seen her.
Anthem dismisses his subordinate's question and continues on despite his lingering suspicion.
Shrouded in her hood, Leiria laments the unlikely coincidence of their meeting. Memories of their shared past collide with the tension of their current encounter.
The scene shifts 9 years into the past to a sun-drenched estate garden. Young Leiria sits peacefully among blooming flowers, lost in her artistic sketches. Startled by a sudden call, the young girl looks up from her work.
Her father, Kaizak, approaches through the garden with a warm and loving expression.
Leiria beams with joy and greets her father with an affectionate shout.
Kaizak Eros Wisteria finds his daughter and gently acknowledges her spot in the garden.
They share a tender moment discussing Leiria's deep love for the fragrant lilac flowers. With an innocent smile, Leiria enthusiastically confirms her passion for the garden's plants.
Shyness overcomes the young girl as she hides behind her father's tall frame.
A stoic, dark-haired boy stands before them with a serious and unreadable gaze.
Leiria peers out at the silent visitor as he watches her with intensity.
Kaizak formally introduces the young Anthem Isaac Vergerhines to his hesitant daughter.
The atmosphere shifts when Kaizak announces that Anthem is Leiria's future fiancé. Pure shock and bewilderment wash over Leiria at the sudden mention of marriage.
Anthem stands distantly as Leiria struggles to understand her father's surprising announcement.
The young girl stares in silence at the boy who will become her husband.
Anthem offers a formal introduction and shows his respect with a polite gesture.
Kaizak encourages his daughter to return the greeting to her new fiancé.
Lifting her skirts, Leiria offers a shy curtsy and introduces herself to Anthem.
Sensing her fear, Kaizak reassures Leiria that Anthem is not a threat.
Kaizak playfully asks Anthem to smile so he doesn't frighten the young girl. Her father vouches for Anthem's character, calling him an honest and trustworthy man. Narrative text highlights Anthem's exceptional talent as he stands stoically in the garden. Kaizak promises that Anthem will protect her and urges the children to bond. The two children stand face to face, surrounded by the beauty of the estate garden.
Anthem acknowledges his intimidating aura, leaving Leiria blinking in confusion at his apology.
He explains that his time on the battlefield creates an unintentional, frightening presence. Kneeling before her, Anthem asks Leiria to always communicate her fears to him.
A rare, gentle smile touches Anthem's face as he reaches for a plant.
Leiria notices his large hand, realizing he is a man built for war.
Under the scent of lilacs, Anthem takes her hand to seal their promise.
Their path begins together as they walk away into the calm of night.
The Lizand Empire's history of constant war is detailed on a golden map. As the Grand General, Kaizak leads his troops, burdened by heavy military duty.
Returning from the front lines, Kaizak hugs Leiria and apologizes for his absence. Following her mother's death, Kaizak provides a comforting embrace to young Leiria.
As Leiria sketches peacefully on a garden bench, Anthem approaches her with a calm stride.
Leiria beams with joy, expressing her delight that Anthem visited despite his demanding schedule.
The pair sits together in the quiet garden, Anthem stoic while Leiria appears slightly fidgety. Stolen glances and a bashful blush reveal Leiria's growing affection for her serious companion.
Anthem turns his attention toward Leiria, prompting a startled and nervous reaction from the girl.
With a hesitant voice, Leiria asks if she might be allowed to see his hand.
Anthem looks on with confusion as Leiria reaches out to gently touch his large palm.
A small, soft smile touches Anthem's lips as he asks her to apply medicine.
They share a quiet moment of proximity on the bench as the afternoon light fades.
Leiria explains that her homemade wound medicine has earned great praise from the mansion's handmaidens.
She enthusiastically describes the healing properties of her special batch while holding Anthem's hand.
Looking down, Leiria internally admires Anthem's hands, viewing them as symbols of his protective nature. Fearful of her own boldness, Leiria quickly apologizes for making such a presumptuous remark. A sudden quick rustle sounds as Anthem abruptly stands up from the garden bench.
Leiria stands and urgently asks Anthem to take the medicine with him for his journeys.
She carefully places the small container of ointment into Anthem's scarred and war-torn hand.
Standing face to face, Anthem promises to use her thoughtful gift with the utmost care.
Hope and longing fill Lyria's eyes as she watches Anthem prepare to depart. Anthem stares at the medicine, a subtle sense of warmth appearing in his golden eyes.
Surrounded by white blooms, Anthem reevaluates his perspective on his own rough and calloused hands.
They exchange a final, heartfelt promise to stay safe and meet each other again soon.
Due to increasing concerns, Duke Kaizak decides to hasten the arrangements for their marriage.
At only 14, Lyria stands at the altar, officially becoming a bride of the ducal house.
Anthem offers a sincere apology for the rushed ceremony and the absence of proper rings. Glowing with happiness, Lyria reassures him that being with him is more than enough. Anthem gazes at his young bride with an intense and unreadable look of devotion.
Sheltered by her veil, Lyria feels a profound sense of joy at finally being his wife.
They discuss spending their special day together, their voices filled with quiet and gentle hope. The peace is shattered by a sudden, urgent shout from a soldier arriving at the wedding.
Sensing her worry, Anthem places his hands on her shoulders and offers a calming reassurance.
The harsh reality of war intrudes as the status of an ongoing battle is discussed.
An urgent shadow falls as soldiers rush into the hall, demanding Anthem's immediate presence.
Left alone, Lyria clutches her bouquet tightly and resolves to never become his burden.
Tears well in Lyria's eyes as she faces the bitter solitude of her wedding day.
Anthem shouts a final promise to return soon as he sprints toward the waiting horses.
He runs with focused determination, leaving his bride behind to answer the call of duty.
Anthem's expression hardens into that of a commander as he prepares for the coming conflict.
In a fleeting moment of romance, Anthem bows low to press a kiss to her hand.
Their fingers linger for a heartbeat before slowly pulling apart, sealing their painful separation.
Narrative text explains that without Anthem, Lyria remained isolated and unsupported within the mansion.
Lyria overhears a maid complaining about how exhausting it is to deal with her constant help.
The servants snicker and dismissively laugh, claiming there is no real work for a mere kid.
Deeply stung by their cruel mockery, Lyria stands alone, feeling like a stranger in her home. Years later, a matured Lyria stands with a polite smile to welcome Anthem back home.
Anthem enters the estate, looking weary from battle but relieved to have finally returned. Lyria reaches out to take his heavy coat, eager to perform her duties as his wife.
They stand together amidst flowers, cherishing the rare and precious moments they share at home.
During a formal dinner, Lyria apologizes for the interruption, acknowledging how busy he must be. Anthem expresses regret for his frequent absences while Lyria offers her unwavering and graceful support. Lyria beams with pure joy, her heart full of warmth and genuine happiness.
During a quiet dinner, Anthem offers a soft thanks to his attentive and caring wife.
Lyria excitedly shares her day's artistic garden sketches while the stoic maids look on.
Anthem encourages her to rest and promises to return to her side quickly. Glowing with a sweet smile, Lyria happily accepts his thoughtful and protective request.
Anthem looks forward to future meals together and learning about her beloved garden herbs.
Delighted, Lyria cherishes the simple, hopeful bond she shares with her husband, Lord Anthem.
Standing at the grand entrance, Lyria warmly welcomes Lord Anthem home after his long travels.
The atmosphere turns icy as Anthem curtly dismisses her greeting and continues walking past.
Confusion and worry cloud Lyria's face as she stares at her husband's distant back.
Anthem bluntly rejects Lyria's dinner invitation, claiming he has no time for her.
A heavy silence falls over the corridor as the ornate double doors slam shut.
Breathless and shaken, Lyria collapses onto a sofa, struggling to understand his sudden coldness.
Shadows stretch across the room as Lyria sits in a pained, silent vigil of heartbreak.
Seeking clarity, Lyria decides that leaving the estate might help clear her troubled mind.
Accompanied by her maid, Lyria ventures out into the bustling town in a simple disguise.
Lyria reveals her intent to find a thoughtful gift for her increasingly distant husband.
Sensing her maid's hesitation, Lyria gently asks what might be bothering her loyal companion. Pensive and uncertain, Lyria admits she is unsure what would truly please Lord Anthem.
They head toward a popular accessory shop, hoping a gift might mend their strained relationship.
Shock freezes both women in their tracks as they spot a familiar figure nearby.
Lyria's heart shatters as she sees Anthem walking intimately with a beautiful blonde woman.
Anthem remains stoic while his companion clings to him, leaving Lyria paralyzed by betrayal.
Back in the mansion's gloom, Lyria sits alone, clutching a mirror in quiet despair.
A sudden clatter sounds as she stands, unable to escape the image of his betrayal.
She wanders the darkened halls, her footsteps echoing the hollow ache in her chest.
Approaching a doorway, Lyria freezes as the muffled sounds of servant gossip reach her.
The maids mockingly discuss the Lord's new companion, calling the young madam pitiably oblivious.
Cruel whispers detail the master's alleged affair with the beautiful blonde woman seen in town.
Horror washes over Lyria as the word affair echoes through her mind like a curse.
Paralyzed by grief, she struggles to process the crushing reality of her husband's suspected infidelity. The servants snicker about her impending abandonment, predicting she will soon be replaced entirely.
Overhearing them laugh about her midnight tears, Lyria retreats into the cold, silent shadows.
She desperately tries to convince herself that their malicious gossip is nothing but baseless lies.
Writing a letter, Lyria decides to keep her suffering secret from her father at war. Determined to find the truth, she resolves to confront Lord Anthem directly about the rumors. Anthem returns looking battle-worn, his hand coated in fresh blood as Lyria approaches.
Panic flares as Lyria reaches out to help, desperate to tend to his obvious injury.
Anthem roughly pulls away, coldly stating he will manage his own wounds without her.
He departs without a word, leaving Lyria to sigh in the cold, cavernous hallway.
The master's carriage rattles away from the estate, deepening the chasm of their separation.
Watching from the window, Lyria wonders if she has become a burden he now loathes.
Grief weighs heavy on the young bride as she bows her head in utter solitude.
Disregarded and neglected by her household, Lyria loses all contact with her husband during war.
Surrounded by shattered remnants, Lyria finds herself more informed by newspapers than her own spouse.
The grand mansion stands as a silent monument to the isolation of her hollow marriage.
A concerned maid suggests a final attempt at open communication with the distant master.
Lyria sadly confesses that holding on to any expectations only brings her more unbearable pain.
When the maid offers to intervene, Lyria dejectedly declines, surrendering to her bitter fate.
Turning away, Lyria hides her broken state, no longer wishing for Anthem to see her.
Grief-stricken, Lyria stares into the mirror as her maid reaches out to comfort her.
The concerned maid suggests that Lyria should return to her childhood home for a while.
Startled by the suggestion, Lyria turns toward her loyal maid with a look of surprise.
While the maid presents a small box, Lyria looks on with a curious and expectant gaze.
Hearing it is a gift, Lyria wonders if her father sent the mysterious small package.
A sudden, sharp click sounds as the lid of the small silver box is pried open.
Inside the box lies a delicate white floral hairpiece adorned with shimmering pearls and crystals. A small handwritten card tucked inside the jewelry box is warmly addressed to Dear Lyria.
Clutching the note, Lyria's expression softens into a pained look of deep, silent longing.
She painfully recalls how Anthem's former kindness is no longer directed toward her failing marriage.
A soft, final snap sounds as Lyria firmly closes the box on her past memories.
Standing by the window, Lyria gazes out at the garden, her heart heavy with quiet resignation.
Within her chambers, Lyria prepares to make a difficult decision regarding her future at the estate.
Turning away from her desk, she prepares to leave her life as a duchess behind forever.
Lyria leaves a final farewell letter for Lord Anthem, wishing him happiness despite their cold separation.
The grand mansion basks in the afternoon sun, unaware of the mistress who has just departed.
Now elsewhere, Lyria reads a letter, having kept her painful separation hidden from her distant father.
Her father's final letter encourages her to live freely before all contact from him suddenly ceases.
Tragedy strikes as the narrative reveals Grand General Kaizak died honorably on the winter battlefield.
A sudden loud clatter sounds as Lyria stands tall in somber black mourning attire.
Behind her dark veil, Lyria's eyes reflect a stoic resolve amidst the crushing grief of loss.
A heavy, repetitive crunch sounds as shovels move earth, finalizing the burial of her father, Kaizak.
Lyria explains how she returned her title, paid the staff, and sold the family mansion. Standing before a new, bright estate, Lyria is greeted with sympathy for her recent, difficult trials. Viscount Herman warmly offers his home, inviting Lyria to live there comfortably for as long as necessary.
Touched by his generosity, Lyria offers a polite and grateful smile to the kind Viscount Herman.
Life continues as various maids tend to Lyria, helping her bathe, style hair, and study.
While reading, Lyria realizes she cannot remain a guest forever and must find her own path.
A soft thud sounds as she closes her book, determined to find a way to earn money.
In his office, Viscount Herman insists on helping Lyria find a suitable job for her future.
Smiling warmly, the Viscount confesses that he already considers Lyria to be like his own daughter. Lyria looks up in genuine shock, deeply moved by the Viscount's unexpected and profound declaration.
Focused and diligent, Lyria works with scales and herbs to craft her own specialty medicinal batches. Lyria looks through the window bars, reminiscing about the time her journey into herbalism truly began.
She recalls a past encounter where a man firmly gripped her arm during a tense, rainy moment.
A year has passed since the successful opening of Lyria's very own shop, the Mulberry Herb Shop. Now a confident shopkeeper, the matured Lyria brushes back her long hair with a satisfied smile.
Inside the bustling shop, Lyria hands a prepared dose of medicine to a waiting female customer.
The customer expresses her deep gratitude, praising the high quality and effectiveness of Lyria's medicinal herbs. A polite, quick rustle sounds as Lyria bows deeply to thank her customer for the kind words.
A cheerful young man named Ronan Cornish arrives at the shop, waving a friendly greeting to Leela. Surprised by his early arrival, Lyria wonders if it is already time for their scheduled garrison delivery. Ronan confirms the time, noting how busy Lyria must have been with her herbal work all day.
Chibi versions of the pair discuss logistics as Lyria asks Ronan to transport the heavy medicine crates.
A soft neigh sounds as Ronan loads a crate onto the horse-drawn cart, continuing his support.
Smiling brightly, Ronan prepares to depart. The narration identifies him as Lyria's first true loyal friend.
A quick, rhythmic top sounds as Lyria hurries up the wooden stairs toward her private living quarters. A sudden, metallic click sounds as Lyria stands before her vanity mirror to undo her purple hair. A light pop sounds as she opens a small vial containing a shimmering, transformative liquid potion. In the mirror, a dark-haired version of Lyria smiles, successfully disguising her identity with a magical brew.
Ronan and the black-haired Lyria prepare to depart for the garrison on their horse-drawn cart.
Ronan notes how different Lyria looks with black hair as the cart begins its journey. Lyria recalls dyeing her hair pinkish blonde previously to avoid attracting unwanted attention at the garrison.
She describes creating a specialized black dye by crushing and improving wild brawlergrass herbs. A rhythmic, heavy rattle sounds as the cart carries the medicine crates through the countryside.
Ronan compliments Lyria's appearance, causing her to offer a shy and grateful smile in return.
Ronan asks if she read the morning news, catching Lyria off guard as they travel. He explains that the Grand Duke has reportedly settled a civil war with incredible, swift efficiency.
Hearing mention of the Grand Duke, Lyria falls into a pensive and deeply troubled silence.
Lyria recalls returning to the capital 2 years ago to finally earn her official pharmacist qualification.
She remembers the overwhelming, festive commotion of the city during her past visit to the capital.
A vision of Lord Anthem's cold, piercing gaze flashes through her mind as she reminisces.
Upon arrival, Lyria announces her delivery to the garrison while a soldier greets her warmly.
The soldier thanks her for coming and asks to bring the medicinal luggage inside immediately.
Lyria is pleased to hear that her herbal medicines are popular and effective among the soldiers.
She agrees to follow the soldier inside to finalize the delivery of the many medicine crates.
Pausing briefly, Lyria calls out to Ronan, asking for just a moment of his time.
She tells Ronan to head home first while she stays behind to discuss the next order.
A soldier promises to ensure she is sent home safely once their business meeting is concluded.
Ronan agrees to leave, but warns Lyria about recent dangerous kidnapping incidents in the nearby village.
Lyria reacts with visible worry to the news of the rising dangers in the local area.
She reassures herself that the garrison's presence will provide her with more than enough protection.
Ronan departs, promising to stop by the mulberry herb shop the very next morning.
Inside the office, the soldier thanks Lyria for her order and promises further medicinal updates. A sudden, loud pounding sounds on the office door, interrupting their quiet business conversation.
Breathless and panicked, a soldier bursts into the room, desperately shouting for the pharmacist's help.
The panicked man identifies Lyria and begs her to assist with an urgent medical emergency.
Looking startled, Lyria confirms her identity as the soldier stares at her with wide-eyed desperation.
The soldier pleads for her help, emphasizing the life-or-death nature of the unfolding crisis.
Lyria hesitates, reminding them she is a pharmacist rather than a doctor as they lead her.
The soldier explains that the heavy snow makes it impossible to reach a doctor in time.
Snowflakes swirl outside as Lyria realizes the gravity of the situation and the lack of help.
The soldier begs the Madam Healer for help, fearing His Excellency will die without her.
Grief and concern cloud Lyria's face as she begins to understand the scale of the emergency.
A heavy, muffled commotion sounds as soldiers gather around their fallen commander at the stairs. The soldier shouts for the crowd to clear the way for the arriving Madam Healer.
Kneeling by the victim, Lyria asks the surrounding men for an explanation of the current situation.
The red-haired soldier explains they were ambushed and an arrow struck His Excellency in the arm. He notes that his commander lost consciousness the moment they reached the safety of the garrison.
Inspecting the wound, Lyria identifies the injury as being caused by poisonous Yatsuru Take mushroom extract.
The red-haired soldier reacts with genuine shock to the revelation of the hidden mushroom poison.
Narrative text details the paralyzing and unconscious-inducing effects of the eastern region's Yatsuru Take mushroom poison.
A sharp, quick rip sounds as Lyria tears open his sleeve to examine the wound properly. Lyria authoritatively orders the soldiers to bring her a clean pitcher, cloth, and an empty bucket. She tightly binds the man's arm with a makeshift cloth bandage to slow the poison spread. The soldier returns with the requested supplies while Lyria prepares for a dangerous medical procedure. A soft, wet sucking sound echoes as Lyria draws the dark poison directly from the wound.
The red-haired soldier watches in stunned silence as the healer risks herself to extract the venom.
A basin on the floor is soon filled with the dark, tainted blood removed from the injury. Lyria finally leans back, satisfied that the immediate danger to the man's life has been averted.
Lyria recommends moving the injured man to a bed for proper antidote administration. The soldiers bow in profound gratitude as Lyria monitors his still unstable condition.
Elliot maintains hope, citing his commander's history of surviving many life-threatening situations.
Upon Lyria's agreement, the soldiers prepare to carry their fallen leader to a room. Two men carefully lift the stretcher, confirming that everything is ready for the transport.
A sudden countdown of 3 sounds, and Lyria freezes as she finally sees his face.
As they lift him, the victim's features are fully revealed to the stunned pharmacist.
Recognizing Lord Anthem, Lyria's heart sinks in absolute shock at the unexpected reunion.
She wonders why he is here, having believed they would never cross paths again.
Lyria watches the soldiers carry him away, her hand trembling as she suppresses her panic.
Elliot notices her sudden change in demeanor and asks if something is wrong.
Struggling to maintain her composure, Lyria apologizes and tries to dismiss her visible distress.
Clenching her hands tightly, she claims she was merely surprised by the sudden emergency.
Lyria cautiously asks if the man in charge of the northern region is truly the commander.
A map details how the garrison's jurisdiction recently shifted under the northern region's control.
The reality of the situation settles in as Lyria processes the geographic oversight.
She reflects that she never would have opened a pharmacy here if she had known.
To her, Lord Anthem is a painful part of a past she desperately wants to forget. Elliot guides the group toward the patient's room while Lyria follows with heavy steps. Despite her desire to flee, she knows she cannot let him die without treatment.
They walk down the dimly lit hallway, the weight of the past following them.
Pausing at the threshold, Lyria announces her arrival before entering the treatment room.
Lord Anthem lies unconscious on the bed, his arm bound in a blood-stained bandage.
Lyria requests a first aid kit, which a diligent soldier has already provided for her.
The soldier offers his full cooperation as she takes the heavy wooden medical box.
Elliot bows again, expressing his sincere thanks for her life-saving intervention.
He introduces himself as Elliot Baroque Brass, the loyal aide to the unconscious commander.
Lyria offers her alias, introducing herself as Sarah Mulberry, a healer from the nearby town. Elliot promises to stay out of her way as she begins the delicate treatment.
Observing her efficient movements, Elliot asks about her extensive training and skill as a healer.
Lyria explains that her proficiency comes from treating the many injuries she suffered in her past.
She recalls the solitary and dangerous task of gathering rare medicinal herbs in the wilderness. The memory of her past struggles reflects in her eyes as she examines her patient. She reveals her scarred hands, proof of the rough work required to master her craft.
Looking down at him, she humbly suggests her own injuries are insignificant compared to a soldier's.
Lord Anthem remains deathly still, his breathing shallow as the poison continues to affect him.
Lyria sits quietly by the bedside, watching the man who was once her husband.
She realizes she had never seen this vulnerable side of the always perfect military commander.
Her chest tightens with an old familiar ache as she sits by his side once more. Elliot interrupts her thoughts, hesitantly beginning to voice a suspicion he has developed.
He asks if she has known his excellency before, catching Lyria completely off guard.
He quickly apologizes, assuming she might be a civilian the commander once saved in battle.
Lyria firmly denies any prior connection, insisting that this is their very first meeting.
She wonders aloud if the commander frequently saves people during the chaos of war.
Elliot confirms that his commander always prioritizes civilian lives over the outcome of the battle. A vision of Anthem protecting civilians reveals a compassionate side Lyria never knew he possessed. She is struck by the revelation of his battlefield heroics, which contrast her cold memories. She previously viewed him only as a merciless warrior who calculated victory with blood. A faint, sad smile touches her lips as she chooses not to dwell on the past. Lyria kindly urges Elliot to get some rest, thanking him for his help and concern.
Elliot requests that the pharmacist look after the commander as she enters the treatment room.
Clad in her purple hood, Lyria prepares a medical syringe with deep, silent concentration. Anthem remains unconscious while Lyria approaches his bedside to begin the delicate life-saving procedure.
Sweat beads on Anthem's forehead as he breathes heavily through the pain of the poison.
Noticing his excessive perspiration, Lyria prepares the necessary antidotes from her heavy wooden medical box.
A sudden, firm grasp catches her wrist as Anthem abruptly wakes with a pained shout.
Sitting up with a start, Anthem demands to know her identity with a suspicious gaze. Startled, Lyria explains she is a healer who was asked to treat his serious wound. Anthem questions her presence while she begs him to release his tight grip on her. Though he appreciates the treatment, the commander coldly orders the healer to leave at once. He insists on handling the medicine himself, shouting for her to get out immediately. A sharp, quick gasp sounds as Anthem pulls her back, his expression turning to shock. Staring intensely at the woman before him, Anthem whispers Lyria's name in complete disbelief.
His eyes search her features as he repeats her name, unable to believe his senses.
Anthem asks if it is really her, while Lyria desperately denies her identity in panic. A soft, quick touch follows as Anthem gently tilts her chin to see her face. He begs her not to lie, certain that she is the woman he has sought.
Lyria remains silent, wondering how he recognized her despite her changed hair and eye color. Overwhelmed by emotion, Anthem pulls the pharmacist into a tight, desperate, and sudden embrace.
He confesses he has been searching for her as Lyria stays frozen in his arms.
Lyria's gaze remains troubled as she processes his claim of searching for her all along.
Pulling away in a panic, she insists he has the wrong person and demands release.
She claims she knows no one named Lyria, scolding him for grabbing a complete stranger.
Anthem looks devastated as he asks once more if she is truly not his wife. He finally looks down in shame, offering a quiet apology for his rude and forceful behavior.
Lyria announces her departure to find Elliot, urging the commander to take the remaining antidote.
She quickly turns and walks away from the bedside, her heart racing from the encounter.
Despite the tension, Lyria stops to carefully administer the medicinal syringe into his bandaged arm.
She explains the poison's lingering effects and advises him to rest and eat properly. Silence falls between them as she finishes the task, the commander looking away in thought.
Anthem confesses he has been searching for a long time for a woman like her.
A vision of the white-haired Lyria from his past flashes through his longing mind. Lyria continues packing her supplies, avoiding the commander's gaze as she prepares to leave. She keeps her back turned, maintaining a professional distance as she moves toward the exit. Lyria points to her dark features, insisting she is nothing like the woman he knows.
Anthem notes that her hair waves exactly like his wife's, his gaze lingering with suspicion. A sudden, warm flush creeps onto Lyria's face as she reacts to his persistent observation.
A quick, soft rustle sounds as Lyria pulls her hood low to hide her expression.
She repeats her denial before rushing toward the door, desperate to escape the tense room.
Anthem remains sitting on the bed, offering one final apology for touching her without thinking.
Lyria flees into the hallway, telling him to take care of himself as she leaves.
Anthem notices her dropped handkerchief, but she tells him to keep it while running away.
In the corridor, Elliot greets the pharmacist, commenting that her timing is absolutely perfect.
He points to the heavy snow outside, explaining he has arranged for her to stay.
Lyria informs the red-haired soldier that the commander is awake and has received the antigerb. Elliot beams with joy, thanking her profusely for saving His Excellency's life tonight.
He offers to show her to her room, encouraging her to finally rest and relax.
Looking confused, Elliot wonders if he inadvertently said something that made the healer feel upset.
Alone in the dim hall, Lyria hides her face as silent tears of sorrow fall.
Ronan suddenly appears, scolding her for being careless in a voice filled with genuine concern.
Ronan scolds the white-haired woman for her absence while she blames the heavy snow.
Ronan heads off to work, leaving the white-haired Leela with a stern warning to stay careful.
Alone in her shop, Leela sighs over the scolding and prepares for the day ahead.
A sharp, quick snip sounds as Leela meticulously trims medicinal herbs at her workbench.
Lila reflects on her unexpected reunion with Anthem, hoping their paths never cross again.
She acknowledges the vast social gap between the Grand Duke and a humble commoner like herself.
As the sun sets over the pharmacy, a polite greeting signals a customer's arrival.
Lila serves a regular customer, presenting the prepared medicine as they exchange pleasantries.
Thinking back on Ronan's earlier warnings, Leela remains lost in deep, private thought. The customer warns Leela that young women are currently being targeted in town at May.
Concerned for her safety, the customer suggests Leela dye her hair and eyes dark again.
Lila agrees that being cautious is best and decides to follow the woman's advice immediately.
With a polite bow, the customer takes her leave as Leela expresses her sincere thanks.
A sudden, soft rustle sounds as Leela considers the dangerous reality of her situation. Memories of a happier past flicker behind her eyes as she contemplates her next move.
Determined to survive, Leela resolves to protect herself through any means necessary.
A sudden, sharp click sounds as Leela emerges from the back room with freshly dyed dark hair.
Soft, rhythmic thuds echo as the dark-haired pharmacist descends the wooden stairs to the storefront.
Lila greets a new visitor, her professional smile masking her inner tension.
Panic strikes Lila's face as she recognizes the man standing at her counter.
Lord Anthem stands before her in full uniform, his intense gaze fixed on the dark-haired pharmacist.
Trying to stay calm, Leela asks how she can help, thankful for her new disguise.
She cautiously questions how he located her shop as Anthem maintains a stoic presence.
Anthem explains his visit, and Leela politely thanks him for making the journey. Anthem offers a rare, soft thank you, his expression softening slightly as he looks at her.
A quick, soft gasp sounds as Leela looks away, feeling the weight of his stare.
Tension thickens in the room as Anthem continues to watch the nervous, dark-haired woman.
Anthem suddenly asks if she has any health issues, catching Leela completely off guard.
Recalling her selfless act, Anthem expresses concern that she might have been poisoned while treating him.
He questions her unconventional treatment method, prompting Leela to explain the dire emergency.
Anthem gently tilts her chin upward, firmly ordering her never to take such risks again.
Looking directly into her eyes, he demands her understanding, while Leela remains frozen.
A long, weary exhale escapes Anthem as he processes her quiet, submissive agreement. A heavy, rhythmic thud sounds as Anthem reiterates his purpose for visiting the pharmacy.
A sudden, loud clatter sounds as Anthem drops a heavy bag of gold onto the counter. Anthem looks thoughtful as Leela rejects the payment, insisting his gratitude is more than enough.
Silence stretches between them as Leela nervously avoids eye contact across the countertop.
With a charming smile, Anthem invites the pharmacist to join him for a meal.
Anthem insists on the invitation, mentioning his extended stay at the nearby garrison.
Lila's internal panic grows as she desperately searches for a way to avoid him.
Ronan suddenly enters the shop, interrupting the tense moment and calling out to Leela.
Lila greets Ronan warmly while he reminds her of their planned dinner appointment tonight.
Anthem notes her rejection with a jealous smirk, while Leela explains Ronan is like family.
Suspicion clouds Anthem's eyes as he asks about the exact nature of their close relationship. A sudden, rhythmic jingle sounds as Elliot arrives to summon the commander back to base.
Elliot enters the shop and greets Miss Mulberry, recognizing her from the previous emergency. With a polite bow, the red-haired soldier expresses his sincere gratitude for her help.
Anthem issues a final, chilling warning that running away will only trigger a massive search.
A sudden, sharp gasp sounds as Anthem's threat leaves Leela visibly shaken and terrified.
Anthem and Elliot depart, leaving the pharmacy behind as Leela processes the commander's final words. Lila observes the new customer's impressive presence, feeling an eerie sense of familiarity.
Alone in the room, the dark-haired pharmacist reflects on the man's strange intensity.
Still possessing her light-colored hair, Leela gasps in shock while opening a mysterious package. She finds an expensive gown from a high-end boutique accompanied by a formal invitation.
Lila realizes she is expected to wear these high-class dresses to an upcoming dinner.
Standing among the gifts, the white-haired woman remains deeply troubled by the commander's intentions.
A carriage rumbles through the forest, carrying the pharmacist toward her inescapable appointment.
Transformed in a shimmering blue gown, the dark-haired Lila looks every bit a noblewoman.
She touches the delicate fabric, never imagining she would wear such finery again.
Lila sighs, lamenting how she has been swept up in the commander's overwhelming pace.
The pharmacist dines in solitary silence at a sprawling, lavishly set table. Her meal is interrupted as she catches the commander's cold, distant gaze across the room.
Anthem abruptly leaves for work, leaving a stunned Leela alone with her thoughts. She watches his back as he departs with his retinue, feeling a familiar ache.
A sudden, sharp click sounds as the door closes, leaving Leela in heavy silence.
Nearby maids whisper and giggle, their mockery adding to Leela's growing discomfort and isolation.
Cold memories of the past resurface, reminding Leela of the unpleasant times she once endured.
Anthem arrives at the carriage, offering his hand to help the dark-haired woman descend. Elliot greets her warmly as Miss Mulberry, noting her striking and elegant appearance.
The red-haired soldier offers a polite welcome, expressing his sincere gratitude for her arrival.
Lila performs a graceful curtsy, her refined movements catching Elliot completely by surprise.
She offers a polite smile, expressing her readiness to begin her work at the base.
A sudden, soft gasp sounds as Elliot stares in disbelief at her perfect etiquette.
Confused by his reaction, Leela tentatively asks the red-haired soldier if something is wrong.
Elliot admits his surprise, questioning where a commoner learned such flawless, high society manners.
Lila quickly fabricates an excuse about her past connections to a baron's household.
Elliot is impressed by her experience, while Leela resolves to be more careful.
She offers a simple confirmation, masking her inner anxiety with a calm, professional facade.
A butler arrives to handle her belongings as Elliot continues to watch her intently.
Elliot gestures for her to follow him, leading the way into the grand hallway. He offers a charming compliment, noting that she looks even more beautiful than usual tonight.
Elliot remarks that she truly resembles a noblewoman, causing Leela to react with surprise.
She thanks him for the comfortable journey, grateful for the polite escort provided.
Elliot reveals Anthem's disappointment at being unable to pick her up personally due to work.
Lila privately reflects on the awkwardness of being alone with the commander in a carriage.
Elliot points toward the grand dining hall as they approach the center of the palace.
Lila spots Anthem walking with his aides, a scene mirroring their past life together.
She watches the commander from afar, the familiar sight stirring deep, buried emotions.
Lost in thought, Leela continues to observe Anthem as he manages his military duties.
Anthem's sharp gaze suddenly locks onto her, his eyes filled with an intense recognition.
A sudden, quick step sounds as Anthem closes the distance, firmly grasping her wrist.
He pulls her into a breathtaking embrace, flowers blooming around them in the romantic light.
Lila looks up in shock as Anthem holds her close, the world fading around them.
Elliot stares in pure bewilderment as the commander holds the pharmacist with possessive intensity.
A sudden, sharp gasp sounds as Elliot reacts to the commander's uncharacteristically bold behavior.
Anthem offers a quiet apology for his mistake, while Leela remains frozen in his arms. Standing amidst the blossoms, the pharmacist looks radiant and ethereal in her shimmering gown.
She shyly thanks him for the gift, while Anthem expresses his satisfaction with her appearance.
Lila stands amidst the bustling soldiers, feeling small and conspicuous in the crowded hallway.
An aide interrupts with a question about documents, though Anthem's attention remains elsewhere.
Anthem dismisses his aide, deciding to conclude his work for the day.
Anthem directs urgent matters to Elliot, leaving the red-haired soldier completely flabbergasted.
Elliot reluctantly accepts the responsibility as Anthem maintains a cold, unwavering stare.
Elliot cheerfully takes charge of the staff, allowing Anthem to depart the base.
Lila watches the soldiers walk away, worrying if she is causing an inconvenience.
Lila suggests postponing their meal if he is too busy with military affairs.
A sudden, sharp click sounds as Anthem approaches, and Lila thanks His Excellency.
Anthem takes Lila's hand, insisting that dining together is his highest current priority.
Anthem looks into Lila's eyes, expressing his hope that she enjoys her day.
A sudden soft clink sounds as a luxurious steak and wine are served.
Anthem raises his wine glass, questioning her decision to open the herb shop. Lila is visibly startled by the question, but offers a polite, quiet confirmation.
Anthem asks if she managed the business alone as they dine in solitary luxury.
A sudden, soft swirl sounds as Anthem observes his wine and praises her efforts.
Lila credits her success to her supportive community, admitting she often makes mistakes.
Lila finds it difficult to eat while Anthem continues to stare with intense focus. A sudden, soft thud sounds as Anthem sets his glass down, noting her reputation.
Anthem recalls the shop's wonderful atmosphere and its impressive collection of rare herbs.
Rare medicinal herbs fill the vision as Anthem lists the varieties he observed earlier.
Lila is shocked, questioning how a military commander learned so much about medicinal plants.
Anthem explains he listened to his wife's teachings because of her deep herbal passion.
Lila apologizes for assuming the technical conversation was too difficult for him to follow. Anthem reveals that seeing his wife's happiness while talking about herbs brought him joy.
Lila chokes on her wine in shock, while Anthem watches her with wide-eyed surprise.
Lila blushes and looks away as Anthem shifts the conversation to a new topic.
Anthem notes that her herbal wisdom proved vital for survival during his time at war. Visuals of edible roots and grasses illustrate the life-saving knowledge she shared with him.
Anthem mentions his subordinate's appreciation for the protein-rich bark Lila once taught him about.
A quick, soft scrape sounds as Anthem cuts his meat, dismissing the survival talk.
Lila reflects on how significantly they have both changed throughout the last 4 years. She contemplates her past resentment, wondering if things could have been different between them.
Anthem notices her deep thought and asks if she feels exhausted from the long evening.
A sudden, soft clatter sounds as a waiter clears the table and Lila gives thanks.
Anthem requests her company for a little longer, wanting to show her something special.
Lila observes the clock, feeling conflicted about extending their time together any further tonight.
Anthem looks downcast and vulnerable, pleading for her to stay just a little bit longer. Lila blushes and gives her quiet consent, deciding to remain with him for a while.
A sudden, rhythmic click sounds as Lila follows Anthem up the grand candlelit staircase.
Anthem reaches out his hand to Lila, leading her toward a private balcony.
A sudden soft rustle sounds as Anthem adjusts her cloak to shield her from cold.
Lila blushes as Anthem gently pulls the hood over her dark hair, showing concern. A sudden, loud creak sounds as Anthem swings the balcony doors open for her.
A sudden, sharp gust sounds as Lila clutches her cloak against the cold night wind.
Lila gasps in pure wonder at the magnificent, star-dusted night sky stretching above them.
Anthem remarks that while the sky is beautiful, something else is even more captivating. Anthem asks her to look down from the balcony, a faint blush on his face. Looking down, the pair observes a breathtaking, glowing garden hidden within the palace grounds.
Lila smiles radiantly, overwhelmed by the beauty of the surprise Anthem has prepared.
Lila expresses her deep admiration for the soldiers who protect such a wonderful landscape.
Anthem smiles warmly, moved by her genuine happiness and appreciation for the beautiful scenery. Looking away, the dark-haired pharmacist reflects on the heavy burden the commander carries alone.
A sudden, soft shiver sounds as Anthem apologizes for the cold and suggests heading inside.
Lila agrees they should leave, her voice trembling slightly as she prepares to depart.
A sudden, sharp gasp sounds as Lila reacts to the commander's unexpectedly firm touch.
Anthem quickly releases her, offering a sincere apology for causing her any apparent discomfort.
Lila reveals the scars on her hand, admitting her embarrassment over their rough, uncared-for appearance.
Anthem gazes intently at her slender hand, his expression softening with a mixture of pity and respect.
He acknowledges the immense effort she put into surviving alone, leaving Lila momentarily speechless.
Lila watches in confusion as Anthem produces a small container of medicinal ointment.
A sudden soft rub sounds as he applies the cream, reminding Lila of his past affection.
Anthem carefully treats her hand while Lila watches him with a mixture of wonder and sadness.
Lila decides she must leave, feeling that staying any longer would only deepen her internal conflict.
A sudden, rhythmic click sounds as Lila walks away,
insisting she cannot stay the night.
Anthem offers his hospitality, but Leela remains firm, citing her early work schedule for the next morning.
She promises to return the borrowed dress soon, thanking him one last time for the evening.
Lila privately resolves to distance herself, feeling unable to repay the commander's overwhelming kindness.
She politely declines a formal send-off, bowing before making her final exit from the balcony.
A sudden soft slide sounds as Leela steps through the door, leaving the commander in silence.
Anthem remains on the balcony alone, staring out at the garden as the night air cools.
A sudden quick patter sounds as a blonde maid approaches the commander to attend to him.
Anthem orders the maid to ensure the pharmacist is escorted home safely by a proper carriage.
The blonde maid receives her instructions, noting the commander's unusually attentive care for their guest.
She boldly questions why he isn't personally chasing after the woman he clearly cares for.
Anthem envisions himself embracing Leela, admitting his secret desire to hold her and ask her to stay.
He reflects on the 4 missing years and the wariness Lyria now displays toward him.
Dismissing his thoughts, Anthem informs the maid he is returning to his office to continue working.
A sudden rhythmic click sounds as the pair descends the stairs, discussing the late-night workload.
Anthem admits he wouldn't be able to sleep anyway, his mind too occupied by recent events. The blonde maid bows respectfully, taking her leave for the day as the commander continues on. Anthem stands in the grand hallway, lost in a moment of silent, heavy contemplation.
He remembers how radiant Leela looked earlier, her beauty leaving a lasting impression on his heart.
Anthem acknowledges how dazzling she has become, even as he struggles with their complicated past.
He finds joy in their reunion, despite feeling like the only one excited about their meeting.
Watching the empty space where she stood, Anthem wonders if she felt this same loneliness before.
His thoughts drift back to a specific night 4 years ago, under a similar moon. The full moon shines brightly over the landscape, mirroring the quiet atmosphere of the commander's memories.
Anthem questions if things would be different now if he had chosen a different path back then.
Memories of the brutal front lines resurface, recalling the exhaustion and loss of his fallen comrades.
The scene shifts to the past as the estate staff welcomes Lord Anthem home from war. The white-haired Lyria stands among the maids, offering a warm, hopeful smile to her returning husband. A sudden, soft rustle sounds as she performs a graceful bow, waiting for his acknowledgement.
Anthem coldly walks past her with a brief reply, intentionally maintaining a distance between them.
He reflects on his past stubbornness and how he spent months avoiding his wife's presence. Back in the military camp, soldiers work tirelessly to manage supplies during the ongoing conflict. A medic addresses the commander, signaling that a wounded soldier has finally regained consciousness.
Anthem visits the dying blonde soldier who desperately gasps out a final, urgent request. The soldier places a floral hair ornament into Anthem's hand, pleading for its safe delivery.
Anthem promises to fulfill the request as the blonde soldier passes away with a peaceful smile.
Stricken by grief, Anthem realizes he has neglected the precious people currently in his life.
Elliot runs through the camp, calling out urgently to the commander amidst the bustling military activity.
In a flashback, Elliot delivers a grim battlefield report to the devastated commander.
A somber notification reveals that Lord Wisteria has tragically fallen in battle. Anthem's golden eye widens in shock as the reality of the loss sinks in. He questions the delayed news, learning the tragedy occurred over 2 weeks ago.
Anthem remembers the fallen lord's immense strength and fears for Lyria's future.
Panic grips Anthem as he vows to return to his wife immediately.
A bell rings loudly as an urgent warning of an enemy attack sounds.
Grit-toothed, Anthem orders his remaining soldiers to intercept the approaching enemy forces immediately.
They ultimately won the war, yet a month passed since the Lord's death.
The scene shifts to the quiet moonlit palace where the night remains calm. Anthem stares at a letter, his expression shadowed by deep grief and regret.
He searches desperately for Lyria, unable to comprehend her sudden and complete disappearance.
Anthem finds her childhood home deserted, the estate stripped of its titles and belongings.
A sudden sharp clang sounds as Anthem grips the locked gates of the abandoned manor.
He desperately mounts his horse, determined to find a clue to her location.
Anthem's hands tremble as he grips the reins, riding hard through the forest. Rhythmic hoofbeats sound as the commander gallops across the sunlit valley in pursuit.
Back at the palace, Anthem demands answers about the treatment of his wife.
A maid tearfully explains how Lyria was harassed and denied food and letters.
Anthem's guilt deepens as he reflects on the insults she endured while he was away.
Standing alone, Anthem laments his foolishness for not being more considerate toward her.
He realizes his mistake in prioritizing the war over his wife's immediate well-being.
Anthem pleads for information regarding Lyria's whereabouts after she left her childhood home.
Anthem meets with a brown-haired man in a formal, well-lit sitting room.
The man firmly refuses to reveal her location to protect her from more pain.
He recounts the terrible, fragile state she was in upon arriving at his doorstep.
Stunned, Anthem sits in heavy silence, finally understanding the depth of her suffering.
Anthem lets out a sharp huff, closing his eyes against the painful memories. 4 years passed as he refused to remarry, clinging to the hope of reunion. The full moon glows as Anthem reflects on his persistence, finally paying off.
Looking out a window, Anthem admits his past actions toward her were truly unforgivable.
He sighs deeply, acknowledging that he cannot face the future without her by his side.
A vision of Lyria in a shimmering blue dress haunts his thoughts with beauty.
Time moves forward to the day after the dinner party at the local house.
Anthem returns to his duties, reviewing stacks of paperwork at his ornate wooden desk.
Documents reveal a series of kidnappings involving the illegal use of various magical tools.
A report identifies Viscount Theodoric Gold as a prime suspect in the criminal activity.
Anthem ponders the shady dealings of the man he has long suspected of villainy.
A quick, soft rustle sounds as Anthem sets down his quill after signing papers.
He notes the suspect's progression from illegal trade to the abduction of innocent people.
A sudden, soft slide sounds as Anthem opens his desk drawer to find something.
Anthem gazes at a small note, admitting his longing to see Leela again soon.
He wonders if he can spare any time from his busy schedule for a visit.
A sudden, soft tap sounds as someone waits outside the commander's office door.
A sudden, sharp click sounds as the red-haired subordinate enters with a new report.
Anthem looks up from his work, asking if there is an issue with the documents.
Elliot reminds his commander that a mountain of paperwork still requires his urgent attention.
The report confirms that the faction responsible for the recent attack were indeed the kidnappers.
Anthem learns that the ambush was planned using information they shouldn't have had yet.
Elliot reports suspicious figures near Miss Mulberry's residence while Anthem listens with grim focus.
Anthem contemplates protecting Lyria despite her wariness, struggling with her current distrust of his motives.
Elliot approaches the commander with a hesitant suggestion regarding the safety of their pharmacist guest.
The red-haired subordinate suggests scolding Miss Mulberry as a protective tactic, much to Anthem's shock.
Anthem reacts with a sharp, golden-eyed stare of pure confusion at the blunt and unusual proposal.
Elliot clarifies that Leela's extreme caution around Anthem makes his current protection efforts nearly impossible.
He notes how difficult it is to shield someone who actively avoids their designated savior. Elliot points out she practically fled the manor, prompting Anthem's stern demand for more information.
Anthem realizes Gisela gossiped while Elliot apologizes for his blunt assessment of the delicate situation.
Elliot warns that failing to protect her might result in the kidnappers finally succeeding in their goal.
The black-haired commander considers using magical tracking tools to locate the enemy's hidden hideout.
Anthem rejects a dangerous decoy plan, insisting on an approach that ensures her immediate safety first.
Losing his composure, Anthem shouts about the unbearable risk of criminals escaping with her forever.
Elliot tries to calm the commander, emphasizing that her importance shouldn't override their tactical duty.
The red-haired man scolds Anthem for letting personal feelings compromise his professional military judgment.
A sudden, sharp smack sounds as Anthem strikes his subordinate's hand away in a fit of anger.
Anthem acknowledges the logical argument, but demands that a decoy operation be the absolute last resort.
He adjusts his cuffs, determined to persuade her to accept his protection more willingly than before.
Elliot notes the commander's uncharacteristic hesitation and lack of decisiveness regarding the specific woman.
The subordinate asks point-blank who Miss Mulberry really is, but Anthem remains stoically silent. Elliot apologizes for prying, but remarks on Anthem's unprecedented and intense level of concern for her. He jokingly asks if Anthem has a specific preference for women of her quiet, mysterious type. Anthem finally admits she is his wife, leaving the red-haired man completely stunned by the revelation.
Elliot is speechless, struggling to process that the local pharmacist is actually the commander's long-lost spouse. A sudden, loud shout sounds as Elliot's shock startles a nearby soldier carrying papers in the hall. Elliot confirms her identity as Lady Lyria, daughter of General Kizak, in a state of total disbelief.
He is overwhelmed by the miracle of their reunion after 4 long, painful years of separation.
Elliot celebrates the finding while Anthem remains focused on the many dangers still facing her.
Anthem reviews his plans, knowing they must act quickly to prepare for the looming enemy threat. He issues firm orders to arrange for Leela's safety as she remains a primary target for kidnappers. Anthem ponders the delicate challenge of persuading her while still respecting her fragile and wary feelings.
He wears a somber expression, deeply worried about how to bridge the gap between their hearts.
Lila gathers herbs in the forest, noticing the setting sun has suddenly left her in darkness.
A sudden, soft rustle sounds as the dark-haired woman prepares to head home as quickly as possible. She reflects on Anthem's recent absence, feeling a lingering sense of unease following the dinner party. Walking alone, Lila's internal monologue reveals her growing anxiety about the quiet and darkening woods. A sudden sharp snap sounds as she whips around, terrified of an unseen presence in the trees. She sighs with relief, realizing the source of the noise was only a small, harmless rabbit.
Memories of recent kidnapping reports flood her mind, heightening her sense of immediate, looming danger.
A sudden, quick rustle sounds from the deep shadows, making Leela realize she isn't actually alone.
She resolves to run, knowing the forest is far too dangerous to linger in for any longer.
Lila contemplates her isolation, fearing that no one would notice if she truly disappeared into the night.
A sudden, sharp rustle sounds behind her as she senses someone closing in through the brush.
Loud, rhythmic rustling sounds surround her, confirming multiple figures are stalking her through the dense foliage.
Recalling reports of local kidnappers, she realizes her worst fears are finally coming true.
Terror grips her as she sprints through the grass, desperately hoping to find safety or help.
Anthem suddenly gallops into view, calling her name with a mixture of intense panic and relief.
He frantically asks if she is all right, his expression tense with extreme worry for her safety.
A sudden, soft thud sounds as Anthem leaps from his horse to reach her side quickly. He admits his immense relief at finding her safe, while Leela stares back in stunned silence.
Anthem explains he heard she was missing and pulls her into a firm, protective embrace.
Anthem pulls Lila into a desperate, relieved embrace, grateful that she is unharmed.
Lila leans into the hug, softly apologizing for causing him such intense worry. Anthem gently kisses her forehead, expressing relief that he arrived in time to save her.
As a sudden, heavy thump sounds, Lila's heart races while she remains in his arms.
Anthem releases her, and Leela admits his presence is deeply reassuring in this dark hour.
Lila quietly ponders the terrifying and mysterious presence she felt earlier in the shadows.
Anthem offers to escort her home since the night has grown late and dangerous.
A sudden rhythmic thud sounds as a soldier on horseback arrives to report to Anthem.
The subordinate asks if the commander is injured, noting he went after the pharmacist alone.
Anthem orders his men to search the area while he personally ensures Leela's safe return.
He turns back to Leela, asking her to accompany him back to her residence immediately.
A sudden, soft rustle sounds as Anthem lifts Leela onto his horse, startling the woman.
Anthem mounts the horse behind her, instructing her to hold on tight as they move.
A sudden, sharp clatter sounds as the horse gallops, while Anthem repeats his safety warning.
Lila blushes as they ride, while Anthem watches over her with a rare, gentle expression.
Anthem asks why she was alone in the woods, and Leela explains she was foraging.
He scolds her for being reckless, emphasizing that herbs aren't worth her life or safety.
Anthem sternly insists she never enter the forest alone again due to the looming threat.
Lila looks conflicted as she suggests that someone named Ronan could assist her instead. A sudden, sharp tug sounds as Leela grips her dress, admitting she has no alternatives.
Anthem reminds her that he is available, but Leela worries about his busy military schedule.
He tells her to rely on him for anything, leaving her stunned by his kindness.
A sudden, soft rustle sounds as Leela asks the commander to give her more space.
Anthem smiles warmly at her, his golden eyes glowing with a newfound and protective affection. Lila gazes downward, her expression clouded with a mixture of confusion and lingering sadness. A vision of her past self haunts her thoughts, reminding her that hope is futile.
They continue their journey through the woods, bathed in the fading light of the sunset.
Lila thanks Anthem for the escort as they arrive at her quiet, secluded forest home.
Anthem remains silent, his expression turning grim as he prepares to speak a hard truth.
He looks at her seriously, clearly troubled by the dangers she faces living so far away.
Lila pauses as they reach the door, sensing the heavy atmosphere between them.
Anthem admits he is uncomfortable leaving her alone tonight given the recent reports of abductions.
He invites her to stay at the military garrison where she will be properly guarded.
Lila immediately rejects the offer, citing her responsibilities at the pharmacy the following morning.
Anthem warns her that she is a primary target, reaching out to emphasize the danger.
Despite the risk, Leela remains stubborn, refusing to leave her home for the military camp.
She argues that she is not the only woman in town facing these terrifying threats.
Lila points out the unfairness of receiving special treatment while other villagers remain at risk.
Losing his patience, Anthem shouts that her specific situation is the most critical right now.
He explains how her isolation makes her an easy target for the hidden, lurking kidnappers. A sudden, soft brush sounds as Anthem takes her hand, pleading to let him protect her. A sudden, sharp snap sounds as Leela pulls away, refusing his offer of special protection. Lila bows her head, apologizing for the rejection but standing firm in her difficult decision.
Looking resolute, Leela thanks the commander for his concern but insists on her independence.
Anthem pulls her close again, swearing that he won't fail to protect her this time. He holds her tightly, expressing his deep fear of her experiencing more trauma or pain.
Internally, Lila wishes she could finally trust and rely on him after so much suffering.
Despite her internal turmoil, Leela softly repeats her refusal to go with him tonight.
Anthem looks heartbroken, realizing she still feels she doesn't need his presence or help.
A sudden, sharp crunch sounds as Anthem turns away, walking toward his horse in silence. Lila wears a look of deep regret as she reflects on their cold parting.
A sudden rhythmic thud sounds as Anthem departs into the fading evening light.
Anthem glances back one last time, his golden eyes filled with a stern resentment.
A sudden, sharp chill sounds through Leela's mind as she senses immediate, heavy regret.
As Anthem rides away, Leela watches from her doorstep, feeling more vulnerable than before.
Lila stands alone in the quiet evening, her hair tossing in the cold breeze. A sudden, soft sizzle sounds as Leela lights a match to warm her home.
Sitting by the hearth, she realizes she never felt cold when Anthem was near.
Lila gazes into the flames, her eyes reflecting the warmth she just pushed away. Preparing tea, she admits her loneliness and feels her self-reliance beginning to crumble.
A sudden soft crackle sounds from the fireplace as Leela acknowledges her growing feelings.
She pours tea, convinced that their separation is for the best despite her sadness. Tears begin to fall as Leela questions why she is so heartbroken over him.
Overcome with grief, she crouches on the floor, desperately wishing to see Anthem again.
Lila wipes her eyes, her face stained with the pain of her recent refusal.
A sudden, rhythmic snap sounds as Leela eventually drifts into a troubled, exhausted sleep. A sudden, sharp rustle sounds as a dark, hooded figure creeps toward the sleeping woman.
Unaware of the intruder, Leela remains fast asleep in her chair by the fire. A sudden soft gasp sounds as Leela wakes, sensing a terrifying presence beside her.
She stands quickly, knocking her chair over as fear grips her in the dark.
A sudden, sharp rustle sounds as a kidnapper lunges from the shadows behind her.
Lila's eyes widen in sheer terror as she realizes she is no longer alone.
A sudden, muffled groan sounds as a gloved hand clamps over her mouth tightly. Multiple hooded men swarm Leela, pinning her arms as she struggles to break free. A sudden, loud crash sounds as the tea set is swept off the table.
Porcelain shatters across the floor, signaling the violent end of her quiet evening. A sudden, muffled groan sounds as a bound and gagged Leela lies in a carriage. Lila wakes in the moving carriage, terrified to find her hands and mouth secured.
A sudden, heavy clatter sounds as the carriage speeds toward an unknown, dark destination.
In the oppressive darkness, she wonders what horrific fate awaits her at the journey's end.
A sudden, rhythmic scuff sounds as the kidnappers drag their captive into a hideout.
Lila is horrified to see cages filled with other abducted and desperate young women.
A sudden, loud bang sounds as the kidnappers roughly shove Leela into a cell.
She collapses onto the cold floor, her eyes brimming with tears of helplessness and fear.
An unmasked man sneers at her, calling Leela the main attraction of their collection.
He shouts at her to behave, ordering the bound woman to stand up immediately.
The kidnapper mocks her, noting how difficult it was to catch her with soldiers nearby.
He laughs, explaining that the sudden disappearance of her guards finally gave him an opening. Lila trembles on the floor, wondering just how far they have taken her from home.
A terrifying realization dawns on her that these men intend to sell her into slavery.
She recalls the history of the empire's slave trade and its dark, illegal markets. Lila ponders the grim pattern of young women being targeted for their youth and beauty.
She remembers a scene from a year ago when she overheard tavern talk about slaves. A sudden, loud splash sounds as drunken men discuss the value of beautiful women.
Lila recalls her disgust at hearing noblemen talk about playing with slaves like toys. A sudden, sharp tug sounds as she resolves to escape this nightmare at any cost.
Memories of Anthem's warnings haunt her, making her realize he was right about the danger.
She pieces together the kidnapper's words, wondering if Anthem truly tried to protect her.
Lila realizes that Anthem had secretly arranged for her safety all along.
A sudden, sharp clatter sounds as footsteps approach the iron bars of a dark cell.
The masked auctioneer and his subordinates discuss Leela's origin, suspecting she is hiding her identity.
The man in the tuxedo questions the reports regarding the captive's true hair and eye color.
Lila lies bound and gagged on the floor, her purple eyes reflecting her terror in the dim light.
A sudden, rhythmic click sounds as the boss orders his man to wash the prisoner's hair.
Lila flinches as a hooded man enters her cage, his looming presence signaling more impending suffering.
A sudden, sharp swipe sounds as the kidnapper reaches out to seize the helpless, bound woman.
The man roughly restrains Leela, whispering a chilling warning to remain still if she wants to avoid pain.
A sudden, heavy thump sounds as Leela is carried away and later tossed onto a cold floor. Multiple panels show the hooded man preparing to wash the dye from the captive's dark hair.
A sudden, rhythmic click sounds as someone enters the room while a blindfolded Leela huddles in fear.
Lila trembles on the floor, begging the unknown intruder to stop and stay away from her.
A sudden, soft rustle sounds as her blindfold is removed, and Leela blinks her purple eyes.
A sudden, sharp gasp sounds as a hand touches Leela's face, causing her to freeze in shock. A blonde woman in a maid uniform and mask asks Leela if she has been physically harmed. The maid promises to report the abuse and insists on getting Leela bathed and cleaned immediately.
A sudden, soft splash sounds as the maid explains that industrial cleaner would burn Lila's skin.
The masked attendant comforts the weeping woman, assuring her that only water will be used. The maid is awestruck by Leela's magnificent silver hair once the dark dye is finally washed away.
A sudden, loud clatter sounds as the hooded man returns, interrupting the two women in the room.
Lila looks up in fear as the man enters, her silver hair shimmering in the soft light.
The blonde maid stands protectively in front of her captive charge, shielding her from the man's gaze. The man orders the maid to decorate Lila for the show now that her hair is restored.
A sudden, sharp snap sounds as the man leaves, and the maid accepts her new instructions.
The auctioneer smiles greedily, confident that Lila's rare silver hair will make her the night's star.
He anticipates the crowd's excitement, noting that the customers were growing bored with the usual offerings. Lila stands amidst white roses, looking sorrowful in a revealing black lace outfit and butterfly-themed bodice. A sudden, soft sigh sounds as Lila laments her horrific situation, feeling deeper despair than ever before.
The auction begins in a grand, crowded theater where masked noblemen gather to bid on human lives. The auctioneer kicks off the event, presenting a woman from the East as the first offering. He mocks the captive girl in the cage, describing her as a pet or servant for sale.
A sudden rhythmic thud sounds as the crowd enters a bidding war, driving the price up rapidly.
The auctioneer continues the momentum, ordering the next cage to be brought onto the stage quickly.
He announces the final main attraction, revealing Lila trapped inside a large, ornate golden birdcage.
The bidding for Lila begins at 1 million as the auctioneer goads the crowd into a frenzy.
A bald man in a white mask confidently bids 9 million, startling the other greedy noblemen.
A sudden, loud bang sounds as the auctioneer prepares to close the deal on his most valuable asset.
The auctioneer is stunned as a hooded man in the back bids 30 million for the girl. A sudden, sharp gasp sounds as the bald bidder aggressively raises his offer to 45 million gold. The mysterious buyer counters with 100 million, silencing the room with his massive, decisive bid.
The auctioneer stands in shock, frantically asking the crowd if anyone can top the incredible offer.
A sudden, loud crack sounds as the gavel falls, selling Lila for a record-breaking sum. A sudden rhythmic click sounds as the mysterious buyer walks onto the stage to claim his purchase. A sudden heavy thump sounds as the buyer kicks the podium, displaying his immense anger and power.
The buyer demands the keys to the cage while the auctioneer stammers his thanks for the sale.
The hooded man stands tall, insisting on having the keys to the shackles and cage immediately.
A sudden sharp click sounds as the keys are handed over, and the auctioneer encourages him to enjoy.
A sudden heavy clank sounds as the buyer walks toward the birdcage where Lila remains trapped.
Lila watches the man's boots approach the bars, her heart sinking at the thought of her owner.
Tears stream down Lila's face as she questions why her life has become this miserable and hopeless.
A sudden, soft groan sounds as Lila trembles inside the cage, overwhelmed by fear and exhaustion. A sudden, sharp click sounds as Anthem uses the key to unlock the golden cage door.
Lila flinches in terror as the hooded man reaches toward her face in the dark.
Anthem gently removes the gag, promising the terrified woman that he is getting her out.
A sudden, loud shout sounds as Anthem orders his units to capture every criminal in the building.
A sudden, heavy clatter sounds as Anthem's mask hits the floor, revealing his identity to the captive.
Anthem gazes at Lila with intense concern, checking to see if she is mentally present.
He stares at her, his golden eyes filled with a mix of relief and lingering fury.
Kneeling before her, Anthem reminds Lila that he promised to find her no matter the distance.
A sudden, rhythmic click sounds as Anthem carefully unlocks the heavy metal shackles from Lila's wrists.
A sudden, soft sob sounds as Lila finally lets her guard down, admitting how terrified she was.
Anthem regrets not taking her by force earlier, blaming himself for the suffering she endured.
Lila leans into him, offering a tearful apology for her stubbornness and the trouble she caused.
Anthem pulls her into a firm, protective embrace while they remain inside the cold golden bars.
A sudden, soft rustle sounds as Anthem drapes his heavy cloak over her revealing lace outfit.
Lila finds comfort in his arms, her body finally beginning to relax after the harrowing ordeal.
Anthem recalls the moment he saw her caged, admitting he nearly broke the plan in rage. He thinks possessively of Lila, determined to ensure no one ever looks at her like that again.
Anthem recounts how he learned of her kidnapping immediately after their tense parting at the doorstep. Carrying her through a field of roses, Anthem vows to protect her so she can rest.
He holds Lelia close, his expression softening as he looks down at her weary, pale face. Anthem's gaze remains fixed on her, his resolve to keep her safe stronger than ever before.
A red-haired knight reports that the operation was a success and all victims have been rescued.
Anthem carries Lila out of the auction house as guards lead the bound nobleman away.
A sudden, soft groan sounds as Lila slowly opens her eyes, seeing an unfamiliar, grand chandelier.
Lila lies in a soft, luxurious bed, her silver hair spilling across the silk pillows.
She looks around the ornate room in confusion, wondering exactly where her rescuers have taken her.
Memories of the kidnappers and Anthem's sudden appearance on the stage flood back into her mind.
She recalls the terrifying auction and the moment her life was bought for an astronomical sum. A sudden, sharp creak sounds as Lila sits up, wondering if she is in a military garrison.
A sudden, soft thump sounds as she tests her feet on the floor, feeling weak and numb.
A sudden, sharp click sounds as the door opens, causing Leela to gasp in surprise.
Anthem enters the room dressed in formal attire, his presence filling the space with quiet authority. He greets her warmly, calling her Lelia and asking if she has finally woken up. Lila's eyes widen in shock as she hears him use the name she tried so hard to hide.
She realizes her silver hair is visible, meaning her true identity as a noblewoman is exposed.
Anthem explains they are in the Grand Duke's castle and asks how she is feeling physically.
Lelia stares at him, her mind racing as she tries to process her new surroundings. She repeats his words in a daze, stunned to find herself within the Grand Duke's fortress.
Narration describes the snowy city of Crossfire, the northern domain over which Anthem holds rule.
Lelia remains bewildered, struggling to understand how she traveled so far from the eastern markets.
Anthem clarifies that he brought her here because her condition was critical and required expert care. He explains of doctors in the east while Lelia asks how long she was unconscious.
Anthem reveals she slept for a week due to high fever and the drugs used by kidnappers. He reaches out to check on her, noting that she still looks incredibly pale and fragile. Anthem watches her with a steady, unreadable gaze, waiting for her to fully regain her strength.
Lelia thanks him for the rescue, but Anthem dismisses her gratitude, saying a reward is unnecessary.
He explains that saving her was an official request from the Empire, treating it as a duty. Feeling like an unwanted burden, Lelia quietly resolves to leave as soon as she is healthy.
She apologizes for the trouble, her heart heavy as she looks away from her savior.
A sudden, sharp gasp sounds as Anthem catches Lelia before she hits the cold floor.
A sudden, soft thump sounds as Anthem supports the weakened woman, who looks up in shock.
Anthem questions her intent to leave, pointing out that she can barely even walk straight.
A sudden, heavy rustle sounds as Anthem firmly declares that Lelia will live here now.
Lelia realizes with a jolt of fear that Anthem is not joking about her confinement.
Anthem reveals he has already handed management of Lelia's shop over to his own subordinates.
Lelia is stunned as Anthem explains a replacement alchemist has already been sent to her business.
Anthem insists her place is at the castle, dismissing her claims of having renounced her title. Anthem shocks Lelia by revealing that their divorce was never actually finalized or processed properly. A transition highlights the complicated and urgent nature of the character's currently entangled circumstances. Anthem reiterates his claim that they are still married, his gaze remaining cold and steady.
Lelia is devastated to learn that Anthem intercepted the divorce papers before they were processed.
Anthem explains that nobles cannot divorce easily, shattering Lelia's hopes for a simple separation. A sudden, sharp groan sounds as a headache strikes Lelia while she begs for freedom.
Anthem notices her fragile state and tells her to rest until she feels better physically.
Anthem confirms their marriage is still valid, leaving the silver-haired woman feeling utterly trapped.
A sudden, soft sob sounds as Lelia grips her gown, terrified of her past life.
Lelia pleads for a divorce, but Anthem flatly refuses to ever let her go again.
A sudden, sharp click sounds as Lelia closes her eyes, overwhelmed by pain and shock.
Anthem ends the conversation abruptly, ordering Lelia to stay in bed and recover her strength.
A sudden, sharp creak sounds as a blonde-haired maid enters the room to serve Anthem.
Anthem orders the maid to call a doctor immediately for the dazed and trembling Lelia.
Lelia recognizes a familiar mole on the maid's face, connecting her to a terrifying memory.
A sudden, loud shout sounds as Lelia collapses while the others frantically call her name.
Later, a cheerful Lelia welcomes Anthem home to the snowy castle, offering her help.
A sudden, soft thump sounds as she follows him, suggesting dinner in his private room. Anthem chooses to dine in the main hall instead, his exhaustion visible in his posture.
Lelia is happy for the opportunity and rushes off to prepare for their evening meal.
A sudden, soft rustle sounds as Lelia feels genuine joy while dressing for her husband. She moves through the gardens with a light heart, enjoying the peace of the estate.
Lelia waits expectantly for Anthem's arrival, her face glowing with a newfound sense of hope.
A sudden, heavy bong sounds as the clock strikes the hour in the quiet room. Hours pass and Lelia sits alone at the table, her optimistic mood slowly fading away.
A sudden, sharp click sounds as the clock shows it is late and he hasn't arrived.
She stands up quickly at the sound of approaching footsteps, hoping it is finally Anthem.
Anthem enters the hall looking grim and burdened by the military reports in his hand. He is surprised to find her still waiting, asking if she has been there all night.
Anthem agrees to share a meal, although his thoughts are clearly focused on his duties.
They dine in silence at opposite ends of the table, the distance between them feeling immense.
Lelia feels a pang of guilt, regretting that she forced him to eat when busy. A sudden, soft whisper sounds as a subordinate arrives with news of more urgent business.
Watching him leave, Lelia worries for his health and searches for a way to help.
She remembers a herbal sachet she made, intended to help someone fall into deep sleep.
Lelia hopes the calming herbs will make Anthem happy and finally allow him some rest.
A sudden, rhythmic thud sounds as she walks toward the office to deliver the gift.
Lelia stops outside the door, startled by the sound of Anthem cursing in pure frustration.
A sudden, loud bang sounds as Anthem slams his hand onto the map in anger.
Anthem stands alone in the office, questioning the endless fighting and his own weariness.
The subordinate asks if his mood improved, but Anthem remains cold and looks away.
Lelia's heart breaks as she overhears Anthem say their dinner was a silent, empty chore.
A subordinate reminds Anthem that he has yet to share a bed or produce an heir. Anthem coldly declares he has no intention of touching Lyria, leaving her visibly devastated.
Dismissing the personal talk, Anthem orders his men to focus on the next battle strategy.
Lyria reflects on her lonely childhood, longing for a family of her own to love.
She imagines the pure joy of a child reaching out and calling her mother one day.
A sudden, soft sob sounds as Lyria realizes her cherished dream will never come true.
Resolved not to trouble Anthem, Lyria hides her tears and suppresses her growing heartache.
She vows to maintain a brave smile whenever she stands before her distant husband.
The scene shifts to a transition highlighting various ongoing series within the Scanlation group.
Lyria sits alone in the dim room, determined to mask her pain with a smile.
Lying in the grand bed, Lyria stares blankly as she processes her trapped reality.
She is suddenly pulled from her thoughts by a voice asking if she is awake.
A sudden, sharp creak sounds as Lyria sits up to find a maid waiting nearby.
Confused, Lyria asks the blonde-haired woman for her name and purpose in the room.
The woman introduces herself as Gisela Azriel, a servant of the Grand Duke.
Gisela apologizes for her past deceit, revealing she was always a subordinate of his grace.
Lyria is stunned to learn that Gisela was specifically assigned to be her martial guard.
Recognizing Gisela from the auction house, Lyria thanks her for the protection she provided.
Gisela humbly deflects the gratitude, stating she was merely fulfilling the Grand Duke's direct command. Gisela formally reintroduces herself as Lyria's new personal maid, honored to serve her.
Lyria mentions leaving soon, but Gisela firmly states she is to reside here permanently.
Worried about the future, Lyria asks what time Anthem is expected to return home. Gisela explains that Anthem will return very late and spend his time in the study.
Feeling ignored and isolated, Lyria wonders how she can possibly bridge the distance between them.
She offers a quiet word of understanding, accepting the schedule the maid has described.
A sudden soft rustle sounds as Lyria bows her head, resigning herself to the isolation.
Gisela pauses, noticing the heavy weight of sorrow etched onto Lyria's pale face.
Lyria asks about her expression, but the maid quickly excuses herself to avoid further questioning.
A transition highlights Lyria's surprise as she discovers an unexpected gift on her person.
Lyria notices a ring on her finger, wondering when Anthem could have possibly placed it.
A sudden, sharp click sounds as she tests the fit of the mysterious silver band.
Panic sets in as Lyria finds she cannot remove the ring from her left hand.
A sudden, rhythmic thud sounds as Gisela rushes back to the distressed woman's side.
Gisela stops her from pulling, warning that she will only hurt her fingers by struggling.
Gisela reveals the ring's true purpose is to ensure that Lyria can never escape again.
Lyria is shaken, realizing the jewelry is a magical shackle intended to keep her confined.
She notes the ring's placement on her left hand, questioning if Anthem knows the symbolism.
Lyria recalls that their marriage locked rings, remembering a moment from her distant past.
In a childhood memory, Lyria asks her father for his shiny ring, but he refuses.
Her father explains that a ring is a sacred proof of union with one's beloved.
He promises that one day she will receive a special ring from someone who loves her.
Little Lyria laughs joyfully, looking forward to the day she finds her own true love.
She remembers her youthful hope of wearing matching rings with the person she truly cherished.
During their wartime wedding, Lyria felt she couldn't ask for something as frivolous as a ring.
She tries to brush off her feelings, convincing herself the ring doesn't matter anymore. Gisela insists that Lyria must eat a nutritious meal after being meek for so long.
The maid prepares to leave, promising to bring something light for Lyria's delicate stomach.
A sudden, soft thump sounds as Gisela stops at the door to offer one final thought.
Gisela remarks that while Anthem is normally perfect, he becomes quite different regarding Lyria.
She notes that Anthem's legendary composure only wavers when it concerns his silver-haired wife.
Gisela reveals that Anthem stayed by Lelia's side without eating or resting while she was unconscious.
Lelia remains silent, staring blankly as she absorbs the blonde maid's surprising revelation about her husband. Gisela bows respectfully, promising to return soon with a nourishing meal for her recovering mistress. Lelia recalls Anthem's visible anxiety just before she lost consciousness in his arms that night.
Despite his apparent care, Lelia feels unable to trust Anthem's words at face value.
Sitting alone, Lelia resolves to no longer be a meaningless, redundant presence in Anthem's life.
Gazing at the snowy castle, Lelia vows to return to the eastern region where she belongs.
Anthem sits in his study, troubled by reports of expanding monster activity across the northern territories.
Magical beasts are increasingly concentrated in the northern region, threatening the stability of the entire empire.
Mount Zoroast, a sacred and miasma-filled peak, dominates the landscape in the far north of Crossfire.
Monster sightings near human settlements have surged, causing widespread panic among the local imperial subjects.
A sudden, sharp scratch sounds as Anthem diligently writes military orders at his large wooden desk.
Anthem prepares to call a countermeasure meeting to address the rapidly growing monster threat.
Anthem exhales a heavy sigh, leaning his head on his hand in a moment of exhaustion.
Gazella enters the study to report that Lady Lelia has finally retired for the night.
The maid explains that while Lelia is physically recovering, her spirit remains deeply troubled.
A memory shows Lelia pleading desperately with the guards to let her leave her room.
Gisela informs Anthem that Lelia is desperate to speak with him directly about her confinement.
The maid warns that prolonged isolation is severely impacting the silver-haired woman's fragile mental well-being.
Anthem coldly dismisses the concerns, ordering the maid to leave him alone to his work.
Gisela bows and departs, leaving Anthem alone in his grand, dimly lit and silent office.
Lelia lies amidst symbolic flowers, the heavy weight of her confinement gradually wearing her down.
Anthem acknowledges that the current situation cannot last forever, but begs himself for more time.
When Gisela warns of potential resentment, Anthem sharply orders her to be silent and leaves. Anthem recalls holding Lelia tightly, paralyzed by the overwhelming fear that she will eventually vanish.
He admits to himself that he imprisoned her out of a desperate, selfish need to stay together.
Anthem remains haunted by a persistent fear of loss that he cannot seem to cast aside.
A sudden, sharp click sounds as Anthem opens a magical pocket watch that functions as a tracker.
The golden ring given to Lelia is revealed to be a specialized artifact for sensing location. Holding the tracker, Anthem remembers Lelia's heartbreaking plea for him to finally grant her a divorce.
A sudden, sharp creak sounds as Anthem stands up, pushed to action by his inner turmoil.
A sudden rhythmic thud sounds as Anthem walks down the grand staircase with grim determination. Anthem stops at a bookshelf, his eyes fixed on a hidden ornamental box tucked behind books.
A sudden, soft click sounds as Anthem opens the box to reveal an old sealed letter.
A memory shows a hand writing a tender letter to Anthem, asking if he is safe.
The letter mentions a pressed lilac flower sent from her cherished and distant family home.
Anthem recalls their first meeting on a bridge when the lilacs were in full, fragrant bloom.
A sudden soft thump sounds as she seals the sentimental letter with warm, melted wax.
Lelia smiles radiantly in the memory, eagerly awaiting her husband's safe and promised return home.
The image of blooming purple lilacs triggers a poignant and painful realization for the weary Duke.
Anthem remembers the joy of their past embrace, contrasting sharply with the coldness of their present.
He gazes at the letter, finally understanding the true depth of her former, sincere affection. Anthem covers his eyes with the letter, overwhelmed by a sudden, crushing wave of regret.
He admits to missing her deeply, wondering if she once felt this same heart-wrenching ache.
A sudden, soft thud sounds as Anthem stands alone, his heart squeezed tightly by mounting pain.
Anthem walks through the halls, his resolve hardening as he heads toward Lelia's locked room.
He realizes he owes her a sincere apology for his cold, controlling, and manipulative behavior.
The castle guards salute Anthem as he approaches the door to Lelia's private and silent quarters.
Inside the quiet room, Lelia lies asleep, unaware of her husband's late and impending arrival.
Anthem gazes down at his sleeping wife, the emotional distance between them feeling painfully vast. Anthem sits on the grand bed, gazing longingly at his sleeping, silver-haired wife.
He reaches out to tenderly brush a stray lock of hair from Laria's pale face.
Leaning closer, Anthem admits that any further contact would cause him to lose control.
A sudden, sharp click sounds as Anthem abruptly stands, turning away with a conflicted expression.
Lost in a peaceful dream, Lelia murmurs softly while surrounded by blooming purple flowers.
Anthem wonders sadly how long it has been since his wife last spoke his name.
Still asleep, Lelia pleads for him to say her name once more in her dream.
Anthem leans down to steal a deep, lingering kiss from his unconscious and fragile wife.
A sudden, soft thud sounds as he finally pulls away, his heart still deeply troubled.
Anthem admits he can never let her go, his obsession and love tightening their grip.
The scene shifts to the bright morning as Lelia sits alone at her ornate desk.
She begins writing a letter, wondering how her distant family is faring without her.
Lelia looks at the snow-covered castle, hoping to return to her eastern home very soon.
She gazes at winter berries, praying the snow melts by the time she finally returns. Holding her quill, Lelia looks at the unfinished letter with a determined and somber expression.
She stares out at the vast, snowy landscape from the comfort of her private room.
Lelia shouts in frustration, questioning why she is still being kept under guard by Anthem. Trapped behind the window panes, she longs for the freedom she once knew in the East.
Memories of her family and Ronan fuel her desire to finish the letter quickly today.
She resolves to let them know she is safe, despite her current and lonely confinement.
A new maid with brown braids nervously asks for permission to enter the ladies' room.
A sudden, sharp click sounds as Laria allows the young maid to enter her quarters. The maid introduces herself as Maruka, explaining she is filling in for the absent Gisela.
Maruka informs Laria that the Grand Duke has sent Gisela away on an urgent errand.
Seeing an opening, Chibi Laria realizes this is her perfect chance to finally escape.
She recalls Gisela's firm warning about handling any request to leave the room directly.
Lyria wonders if she can bypass the new, unsuspecting maid to make her bold move.
Masking her true intentions, Laria offers Maruka a warm smile and a polite, welcoming greeting.
She seals the letter, knowing she must first get Maruka out of the room. Laria hands over the sealed letter, asking the maid to deliver it for her immediately. She stresses the urgency, claiming the message is for a dear friend living in the East.
Despite her guilt, Laria realizes she has no choice but to trick the young girl.
A sudden, sharp creak sounds as she discovers only nightgowns are available in the wardrobe.
Lyria is horrified to find she lacks any appropriate clothing for a stealthy castle escape.
In a moment of chibi frustration, she struggles to find a solution to her wardrobe problem. Her purple eyes suddenly widen as she spots something potentially useful hidden within the room.
Resolve hardens in her gaze as she prepares to finally flee her grand gilded cage. Lyria vows to leave the castle, no longer willing to wait for Anthem's reluctant permission.
A sudden, soft rustle sounds as she peeks cautiously into the empty, sunlit hallway. She notes the castle's immense scale, marveling at how it resembles the seat of a nation.
A sudden, rhythmic thud sounds as Lyria walks quickly, abandoning her role as the wife.
She realizes with surprise that she has accidentally wandered into the servant's private, narrow passage.
Panic flares as a sudden thud sounds, signaling that someone is rapidly approaching her location.
Lyria flees down the hall, desperate to avoid detection by any of the passing guards.
Her heart races as she presses her hand against a nearby door, seeking immediate refuge.
A sudden thud sounds as she bursts into a room and collapses against the door.
She sighs in relief, realizing she entered the dark room by pure and lucky accident.
Lyria discovers a pile of laundry and realizes she has truly hit the jackpot for disguises.
She picks up a dark dress, deciding it is her only viable means of escape.
Dressed in a maid's cap and uniform, Lyria prepares to slip away from Anthem unnoticed.
Lila notices she is still wearing her pink floral room shoes while in disguise.
Examining her reflection, the pink-haired girl decides her maid disguise is otherwise perfect.
A sudden, sharp gotcha sound startles Leela as the door behind her opens.
Johanna looks confused, noting that the laundry shift ended quite a while ago.
Panicking, Leela stammers an excuse about searching for her lost shoes to avoid suspicion.
In a cute chibi moment, Leela explains her shoe predicament to the skeptical Johanna. Johanna laughs, explaining spare shoes are in the supply room and asking if Leela's new.
Relieved her lie worked, Leela agrees to follow Johanna to the supply room.
Johanna offers to show the pink-haired girl the other rooms while they walk.
They enter the third supply room as a sudden, heavy gotcha sound echoes.
Johanna warns the wide-eyed Leela to be extremely careful around the valuable items stored here. Johanna hands over a shoebox asking if the size will be suitable for Leela.
As Leela opens the box, Johanna notices her fancy pink shoes are quite expensive.
Johanna admires the beautiful floral room shoes and asks if they cost a fortune.
Blushing, Leela claims the shoes were a gift from her brother to end the questioning.
Johanna warmly remarks on their sibling bond, contrasting it with her own fighting sons.
Lila changes into the plain black footwear while Johanna continues her friendly chatter.
Johanna realizes they have not properly introduced themselves yet and stops to do so.
Framed by white blossoms, the pink-haired girl introduces herself to Johanna as Lila Mulberry.
Johanna enthusiastically claps her hands, suggesting they head off to join the others.
Johanna emphasizes their busy schedule, urging Leela to follow her to the gathering place.
A sudden, soft pawn sound accompanies Johanna patting Lila's shoulder in a supportive gesture.
Johanna explains the strict rule against entering the master's office or private room without permission.
Johanna describes a past servant scandal that led to mass dismissals and tighter house rules.
Lila reflects on the master's strictness while Johanna mentions how he saved his current staff.
A portrait shows the dark-haired master, whom Leela feels never truly looks at her.
Lila thanks Johanna for the help and prepares to head toward the main gathering.
Johanna leads the way, noting the entrance hall is chaotic due to new luggage deliveries.
Rushing through the corridors, Leela worries about what she should do in this situation.
The entrance hall is filled with a low, bustling chatter as servants move heavy trunks. Johanna mentions that a certain person's belongings are being delivered to the mansion today.
Lila looks perplexed, asking who the mysterious person Johanna is referring to could be.
Johanna is surprised Leela hasn't heard about the companion the master brought home recently.
Johanna recounts the master returning 10 days ago while carrying an unconscious woman.
In a flashback, the staff watches in shock as the master carries his guest home.
The dark-haired master holds the pink-haired woman close with a look of intense devotion.
A sudden, steady rhythm of footsteps sounds as Johanna explains the master immediately ordered supplies.
Johanna describes the master's exhaustion as he refused to leave the sleeping woman's side.
Johanna adds that the master still checks on his guest every night after work.
Johanna notes how beautiful the companion is, specifically highlighting her captivating, shining silver hair.
Lila looks stunned as the description of the master's lovely companion begins to sound familiar. Johanna pauses and looks thoughtfully at Lila, who remains silent and wide-eyed.
Realization dawns on Lila as she wonders if the mysterious companion is actually herself. Johanna observes that Lila's purple eyes and silver-tinted hair are remarkably similar features.
Mortified, Lila covers her face and frantically denies looking anything like the master's companion.
Johanna laughs at Lila's modesty, noting that it is not uncommon for people to look alike.
Johanna gestures toward the luggage, explaining the items were all prepared for the companion.
Lila is left speechless, staring in shock at the news of the master's gifts. Johanna reveals that the trunks are filled with beautiful dresses and gifts for the lady.
Utterly shocked, Lila realizes the master has been preparing an entire wardrobe for her.
Lyria gazes at a tiara inside an ornate box, overwhelmed by the expensive gifts she cannot accept. A chibi Lyria feels boxed in by Anthem's controlling nature, realizing she must escape his reach immediately.
Disguised in a maid's uniform, Lyria stands nervously with Maruka as other servants move about the castle.
A sudden, rhythmic thud sounds as Anthem strides through the palace with a retinue of guards following close behind.
Lyria panics, pulling her maid cap down as she senses Anthem's imposing and familiar presence nearby. Maids bow low as Anthem returns home, and Lyria realizes her escape plan is in immediate jeopardy.
Maruka rushes toward the Duke, shouting that she has an urgent and troubling report to deliver.
The maid bows in deep distress, apologizing for failing to keep the lady under her proper care.
Anthem listens with a cold, unreadable expression as the maid continues her desperate and tearful apology. Anthem closes his eyes, struggling to maintain his composure after hearing news of his wife's sudden disappearance.
Elliot asks the Major General if he should initiate a search, but Anthem has other orders.
Anthem directs Elliot to take the retainers and proceed to the conference room without further delay.
The Duke dismisses Maruka back to her duties, coldly stating her punishment will be decided at a later time.
A sudden, sharp click sounds as Anthem reaches into his breast pocket to retrieve a hidden item. A sudden, soft click sounds as Anthem opens his magical pocket watch to track Lyria's current location. Anthem gazes ahead with a look of grim determination, his focus entirely on the tracking device's signal.
Lyria's heart thumps loudly as she realizes Anthem might have noticed her from across the vast hall.
A sudden, sharp click sounds as Anthem snaps the watch shut, having successfully pinpointed his target. Lyria freezes in terror, clutching the tracking ring as she realizes her disguise has been compromised. Anthem looks directly toward the hidden woman, his face showing a mixture of frustration and profound relief.
Lyria's purple eyes widen in pure shock as she is officially discovered by her approaching husband.
Anthem demands to know her business in the hall, ordering her to return to her room at once.
Anthem calls out her name as Lyria suddenly turns and bolts away from the group in desperation.
A sudden rhythmic thud sounds as Lyria sprints through the corridor, determined to flee her gilded cage.
Anthem chases her into the snowy courtyard, shouting for her to stop running away from him.
Lyria turns back in surprise as her maid cap is suddenly whisked away by a sharp gust of wind.
A sudden, soft thump sounds as Anthem catches Lyria, pulling her into a tight and desperate embrace.
Lyria struggles against his strong grip, pleading for him to finally let her go and find freedom. Anthem refuses to release her, burying his face near her shoulder in a moment of overwhelming emotion.
Anthem asks why she left on her own, while she insists she cannot stay there forever.
Lyria yells at him to stop being selfish, declaring that she is no longer his property to keep.
A sudden soft rustle sounds as she pulls away from his grasp, her long silver hair flying wildly.
Lyria confronts him about his sudden care, questioning why he's trying to fix things after 4 years. She points out that he lived fine without her, leaving nothing left for him to fix now.
Lyria shouts that she doesn't need someone like him, her pent-up frustration finally boiling over.
Anthem silences her by pulling her into a sudden, deep, and passionate kiss amidst the falling snow.
Lyria's eye widens in absolute shock at her husband's unexpected and incredibly bold display of affection.
Anthem deepens the kiss, ignoring her soft protests as he holds her close in the freezing air.
Lyria's resistance begins to crumble as she finds herself unable to easily escape his intense and overwhelming presence.
Lyria leans against him, sobbing as the weight of the confrontation finally breaks her fragile composure.
Anthem confesses his love for her, his voice trembling with a mixture of sincerity and deep regret.
Lyria is stunned into silence by the words, gasping as she stares at him in complete disbelief.
Anthem repeats his confession, admitting that his love is why he never wants her to go anywhere.
He explains that since her disappearance, he has felt only regrets and realized her true importance.
Anthem calls himself pathetic, his golden eyes filled with a vulnerable and pained expression of self-loathing.
He acknowledges that he knows his sudden confession of feelings is causing her deep and unnecessary trouble.
Anthem gazes at her intently, stating he doesn't care if she chooses to hate and resent him.
He leans his forehead against hers, pleading to just be allowed to stay by her side. Lyria cries out that he is only being selfish, tears streaming down her pale and flushed face.
Anthem winces at the accusation, his expression a complex mix of shame and desperate, lingering hope.
Anthem's voice echoes through the snowy castle grounds, beginning a long overdue apology to Lyria.
Haunted by guilt, Anthem expresses deep regret for the pain and tears he caused her.
Beneath the castle's towering walls, the Duke bows low, clutching Lyria's hand in a desperate plea.
A sudden, cold wind whistles as Anthem remains bowed, seeking forgiveness for his past coldness.
Lyria admits she never expected an apology, her heart still heavy with years of distant treatment.
Stunned by his vulnerability, she confesses she cannot make a decision about their future yet.
Recognizing his sincere remorse, Lyria gently requests that her husband finally stand up before her.
Shivering in the freezing air, she suggests they move their conversation back inside the castle.
Anthem agrees, his protective gaze lingering on her as they prepare to leave the snow.
Upon returning inside, Lyria spots Maruka waiting nervously and immediately addresses the young maid.
A sudden, sharp gasp sounds as Lyria begins to apologize for the trouble she caused Maruka.
Maruka bows in deep distress, tearfully insisting that she alone is responsible for the lady's disappearance.
The maid offers her neck to the Duke's judgment, ready to accept any punishment for her failure.
Horrified, Lyria quickly intervenes, adamant that Maruka should not be blamed for her own escape attempt.
Maruka offers a warm shawl to Lyria, concerned more for the lady's health than her own fate.
With a kind smile, the maid urges Lyria to rest and avoid overexerting her recovering body.
Lyria repeats her thanks, but Anthem cuts in to address the matter of Maruka's official punishment.
The Duke's cold gaze fixes on the maid as he prepares to deliver his stern judgment.
Maruka trembles, accepting her master's authority, while Lyria looks on with growing worry and resolve.
Lyria insists the maid is innocent, but Anthem notes that orders were still clearly disregarded.
Anthem remains firm, stating that failure to follow direct orders must be met with consequences.
He explains that an example must be set, regardless of the lady's personal defense of the maid.
Panic flares in Lyria's eyes as she realizes she must act to save Maruka from suffering.
A sudden, sharp realization strikes Lyria as she turns to confront Anthem with a new plan.
She watches the maid's distress, her determination hardening to find a way to protect her. Lyria looks down in deep thought, carefully calculating her next words to influence the Duke's decision.
She states that while her future remains undecided, she has a specific request regarding her stay.
Lyria announces her intention to remain at the castle for now, surprising both Anthem and Maruka. She proposes that Maruka's punishment be commuted to serving as her own personal permanent maid.
Maruka is stunned as Lyria suggests that serving her is a suitable penance for the failure.
Anthem listens intently, processing his wife's clever attempt to safeguard the young girl's position.
The Duke accepts the proposal, officially assigning Maruka to Lyria's service to satisfy the lady's wish.
Overwhelmed with relief, Maruka gasps in disbelief at her sudden and incredible change in fortune.
Lyria offers a warm smile and takes the maid's hands, welcoming her to her side.
She expresses her desire for an earnest companion, cementing their new bond with a gentle touch.
Lyria apologizes for the danger she caused and asks Maruka to stay with her despite everything.
Tears of joy fill the maid's eyes as she looks at the lady she will now serve.
Maruka enthusiastically vows to do her absolute best, her face bright with newfound purpose and gratitude.
Their moment is interrupted as a red-haired knight approaches the Duke with a look of urgency.
Elliot reports the reappearance of a magical beast, demanding the Duke's immediate attention and command.
A Raumer has been spotted on the main highway, threatening the heavy traffic near the capital.
Anthem takes charge, ordering the protection of witnesses and preparing to depart for the scene.
Lyria encourages him to focus on his duties, promising to stay safe within the castle walls.
Anthem promises to return later to finish their talk, acknowledging the disturbance her presence caused.
A sudden, soft rustle sounds as Anthem smiles warmly, gently squeezing her hand before leaving.
He pulls Lyria into a brief protective embrace, the public display marking a shift in their relationship.
Elliot and Maruka watch in stunned silence, shocked by the Duke's sudden and open affection.
Wrapped in her shawl, Lyria watches as Anthem strides away to handle the monster threat.
She stands with her new maid, her expression complex as the Duke departs for the dangerous hunt.
Far away in the snow, the red-eyed magical beasts growl, waiting for the coming confrontation.
A low, rhythmic growl sounds as red-marked white wolves stalk through the snowy shadows. A sudden heavy rumble sounds as a blue magical burst scatters the fleeing creatures. A massive glowing blue eye watches Lyria, mystical voices hailing her as a child of Ignos.
Back at the castle, Maruka meticulously finishes styling Lyria's long silver hair at the vanity. With a bright smile, Maruka proudly announces she has completed a brand new hairstyle for her lady.
Lyria gazes into the mirror, her purple eyes sparkling with delight at her elegant reflection.
Maruka gushes over the beauty of Lyria's hair while the lady offers a warm thanks.
The maid mentions hearing a fairy's singing voice, leaving Lyria curious about local legends. Maruka explains that the singing belongs to a spring heralding fairy known as the Shushiri.
Realizing Lyria is new to the north, Maruka apologizes for assuming knowledge of regional spirits. Lore of the Zoroast Mountain unfolds, describing how miasma brings forth magical beasts and fairies.
Maruka clarifies that these spirits are usually heard but rarely seen in their physical forms. Lyria hums in thought, wishing she could have heard the fairy's song herself. She notes how deeply she has been sleeping, wondering if the northern air is responsible.
Lyria recalls the peaceful, uninterrupted rest she has enjoyed in her grand, sun-drenched bed.
She insists to Maruka that she is perfectly healthy, just feeling a bit seasonally lethargic. Privately, Lyria admits her exhaustion stems from the awkwardness of potentially facing her husband again.
She remembers Anthem's passionate kiss in his confession, prompting her to continue avoiding him.
Lyria assumes the Duke is too preoccupied with magical beast threats to notice her absence.
Maruka remains skeptical of her lady's well-being, but Lyria gently reaffirms that she is fine.
A sudden soft rustle sounds as Lyria hears a familiar voice, her expression shifting to surprise.
Gisela, a blonde maid, appears and offers a sincere apology for being away so long.
Relieved, Lyria welcomes her back as Gisela explains she was on a mission for Anthem.
Gisela presents a lilac seedling, revealing the Duke deemed its procurement absolutely necessary.
Confused by the Duke's specific request for the plant, Lyria questions its true purpose.
Gisela adds that she has brought someone along who insists on speaking with Lyria urgently.
Johanna, a brown-haired maid, enters holding a small box, her face etched with deep worry.
Johanna bows low, begging for forgiveness for her past discourtesies during Lyria's previous day.
Lyria quickly dismisses any talk of punishment, insisting past misunderstandings were not the maid's fault.
Johanna explains her actions were motivated by the gravity of Lyria's sudden disappearance that day.
She offers the box as a gesture of apology, still feeling weight from her behavior.
Lyria looks at the maid with a kind, forgiving smile, accepting the peace offering.
Johanna pledges to accompany Lyria alongside Maruka, much to the lady's genuine gratitude.
Lyria rejoices at her newfound freedom to roam within the safety of the castle walls.
Gisela suggests a walk in the garden to view the early blooming flowers at their peak.
A sudden soft gasp sounds as Lyria excitedly decides to visit the garden right away.
Gisela instructs Maruka to attend to the lady while she goes to deliver a report.
Both maids take their leave as they prepare to transition to their respective tasks.
Lyria urges Maruka to help her prepare, her mood brightened by the prospect of walking.
In the snowy garden, tiny fairies flutter their wings while whispering about the beautiful lady.
Lyria and Maruka enter the vast, magnificent garden, marveling at the scale of the architecture.
Maruka explains that the Duke invested immense effort to build this one-of-a-kind sanctuary.
Lyria wonders aloud if the stern Anthem actually has a hidden appreciation for beautiful gardens.
Their peaceful moment is interrupted as another maid rushes toward them with a look of urgency.
The newcomer reports that the head maid is searching for Maruka for an immediate assignment. Lyria tells her maid not to worry and to handle her duties without further delay. Maruka promises to return the moment she is finished, clearly reluctant to leave her lady.
A sudden soft chuckle sounds as Lyria waves her off, promising to stay nearby.
Alone by the fountain, Lyria watches the birds fly past as she enjoys the quiet.
She reflects on her choice to remain at the castle, her heart still navigating complicated feelings. Lyria gazes out pensively, her heart heavy with indecision regarding her uncertain future path.
She reflects on how surprisingly comfortable and safe her life in the north has become.
Lyria wonders if she can truly start over with Anthem as a real husband and wife.
A sudden soft giggle sounds as a mystical voice hails Lyria as a child of Ignis. Stepping into the vibrant garden, Lyria feels a sudden shift as spring seems to arrive instantly. More mysterious laughter echoes around her, leaving the silver-haired lady confused and searching for the source. An unseen voice admires her, drawing Lyria deeper into the lush, magical beauty of the sanctuary. Whispers suggest that Lyria has noticed the hidden spirits, causing her eyes to widen in surprise.
Lyria follows a beckoning voice, calling out for it to wait as she rushes through the garden.
Breathing heavily, she ventures further in, driven by a strange sense of comfort and curiosity.
She comes to a sudden halt before a massive, ancient tree standing at the garden's heart.
The tree appears dormant and barren, yet its presence feels significant within the sunlit garden.
Mystical voices announce the arrival of spring as Lyria stares in awe at the sturdy trunk.
An ethereal invitation to sing together rings out, and the ancient tree begins to glow.
Overwhelmed by the sudden magical aura, Lyria's purple eyes sparkle with shock and wonder.
She peers through the branches, witnessing a breathtaking transformation taking place right before her eyes.
The barren tree bursts into full, vibrant pink bloom, looking absolutely magnificent in the light.
Lyria recalls descriptions from a book about a rare tree with wide-spreading branches and red buds.
She wonders if these are cherry blossoms, marveling at the incredible sight in the northern garden.
As she touches the trunk, a chorus of voices whispers that spring has finally arrived.
Lyria feels privileged to see such a legendary and rare tree blooming in person.
Looking closely, she sees a vision of tiny, playful fairies dancing joyfully among the pink petals.
She is swept up in the magic, delighting in the sight of the spirits having fun.
The fairies bid her farewell, promising to meet the child of Ignis again as they vanish. The vision fades, but the tree remains covered in spectacular blossoms, transforming the entire courtyard.
Lyria reflects on the enigmatic nature of fairies while admiring the breathtaking beauty surrounding her. She remains captivated by the scene, finding the sight of the blooming tree utterly mesmerizing. Driven by a desire to see the flowers up close, Lyria prepares to climb the tree. A sudden, sharp gasp sounds as the silver-haired lady is startled by her own bold impulse.
She successfully climbs onto a large branch, noting how long it has been since she climbed.
Sitting amidst the pink petals, Lyria looks genuinely happy as she enjoys her unique vantage point.
Panic flares as her foot suddenly slips, sending a jolt of fear through her.
A sudden, sharp cry sounds as Lyria loses her balance and begins to fall.
She tumbles through the air, completely helpless and fearing the impact with the ground below.
Anthem suddenly appears and catches her, the pair landing safely together on the soft grass. Relieved but embarrassed, Lyria quickly apologizes and checks if the Duke was injured during the rescue.
Anthem looks at her with intense golden eyes, reassuring her that he is perfectly fine. He pulls her closer, his expression softening as he asks if she was harmed in any way. Anthem explains that she was bewitched by an illusion created by the fairies in the garden.
Lyria gasps in disbelief, turning to look back at the tree that she just saw blooming.
The Duke reveals that while he briefly shared her vision, the tree is actually long dead.
He explains that the blooming cherry blossoms were just a fleeting illusion that will never return.
Anthem expresses his profound relief that the strange magical incident didn't result in her getting hurt.
Blushing, Lyria offers her sincere thanks, though she feels awkward being held so closely by him.
Anthem suddenly pulls her into a tight, protective embrace, burying his face in her shoulder.
He asks to remain in this quiet moment for just a little longer, holding her fast.
Flustered, Lyria tries to break the tension by mentioning how busy he has been lately.
A sudden rhythmic thump sounds as Anthem asks if she is all right, his own heart racing.
Lyria notices his scent and feels her own heart beating wildly in response to his proximity.
Anthem whispers that he needs more of her, his voice full of a sudden, desperate longing.
Lyria is caught off guard as Anthem pulls her into a sudden, intimate embrace.
Anthem admits he tried to stay away to avoid forcing himself on her, but failed.
Lyria stammers an apology, her face flushed with deep shock and intense embarrassment.
Anthem looks into her eyes and softly confesses how much he has truly missed her. He reaffirms his love for Lyria, leaving the flustered lady struggling to find her voice. Anthem leans in close, his breath warm against her skin as a soft gasp escapes.
A sudden, sharp gasp sounds as Lyria pulls away, her bare feet tripping on her dress.
Anthem catches her securely, but Lyria remains overwhelmed by the sudden intensity of his feelings. Anthem explains that fairies drain human energy and use illusions to lure unsuspecting people away.
He warns her to remain vigilant, as many spirits in the north use such trickery.
A sudden, heavy panting sounds as the red-haired aide arrives, shocked by Anthem's impulsive exit. Lyria offers a reassuring smile while the red-haired man sighs in immense visible relief.
The aide notes his surprise at Anthem jumping out an office window just to reach her.
The red-haired man exclaims about his racing heart while Anthem and Lyria react with confusion.
The aide frantically begs Anthem to use doors in the future while the Duke remains stoic.
Anthem kneels on the grass to help Lyria put her purple shoes back on gently.
He looks up and asks if she has any plans for the following afternoon's festivities.
Anthem suggests a trip into town together once his business at the church is finished.
Lyria asks if he is truly certain, and Anthem confirms he wants to spend time together. A sudden, joyous chime sounds as Lyria beams, happily accepting the invitation to go out.
Noting the dropping temperature, the red-haired aide suggests they head back inside for the night.
A sudden, soft rustle sounds as Anthem scoops Lyria up to carry her back home. Laria notes Anthem looks strangely satisfied with himself as he carries her through the garden. In the bustling town square, commoners go about their daily routines under the bright sun.
Laria prepares for her outing, wearing a green dress and simple pink shoes as a disguise.
She looks radiant in her civilian attire, her lavender hair flowing down her back beautifully.
Local women flock to a handsome man in a tan vest, begging for his undivided attention. Anthem politely declines their lunch offers, stating he is already waiting for someone very special.
Anthem spots Laria arriving in the distance and waves to her with a wide, welcoming smile.
He approaches her and asks if he made her wait too long for their meeting.
Laria blushes, noting that the other women are glaring at her with intense, jealous looks.
She compliments Anthem's striking appearance, noting he stands out even when dressed as a civilian.
Anthem returns the compliment, drawing surprised looks from the men passing by on the street.
A sudden, soft rustle sounds as they walk together, but Anthem senses they're being watched.
Anthem realizes his maid is following them, regretting letting Gisela talk him into this outing. Gisela, the blonde maid, stands tall and firm as she monitors the couple's progress.
She insists to the Duke that their stroll through the city is definitely a date.
Anthem looks contemplative, wondering if Laria views their outing as a romantic date too.
He sits at his desk in deep thought while Gisela continues to press her point.
Gisela suggests they meet outside in disguises to make the outing more exciting and safe. Anthem considers the fact that this will be their very first outing together as a couple.
He reflects on their past political marriage and how they never enjoyed any leisure time together.
Gisela encourages him to make this first memory truly special and romantic for the lady.
A sudden, soft rustle sounds as Anthem waits in town, looking strikingly handsome and thoughtful.
Anthem feels protective, wishing he hadn't agreed to meet outside where other men can stare.
He keeps a sharp eye on their surroundings, noticing the maid still following them secretly.
Anthem quickly dismisses his concerns when Lilyria speaks to him, offering a gentle, reassuring smile.
He admits to himself that, despite her civilian clothes, Laria is far too beautiful to ignore. Surrounded by white flowers, Laria looks like a vision of pure, ethereal beauty and grace.
Anthem praises her dress, while Laria explains that her maids arranged the outfit for her. Anthem suggests finishing their business quickly so they can enjoy a walk through the city.
Laria is surprised when their first destination turns out to be a grand, sunlit church.
Inside the sanctuary, a monk informs Anthem that the priest has been waiting for his arrival.
Priest Morris warmly welcomes the Duke to the church with a cheerful, respectful greeting.
Anthem introduces Laria to the priest, who is immediately struck by her elegant appearance.
Laria introduces herself as a wisteria, politely greeting Morris as she would a father.
A look of profound shock crosses Morris's face upon hearing the lady's full name.
The priest stammers in disbelief, realization dawning as he wonders if she is Anthem's wife.
Anthem confirms their relationship with a small smile, enjoying the priest's visible astonishment.
Morris attributes their union to divine intervention, while Anthem agrees with a satisfied expression.
Realizing his breach of etiquette, the priest quickly offers his apologies to the noble lady.
He introduces himself as Morris Yakov, expressing his genuine honor at meeting her for the first time.
Laria beams, returning the priest's warmth as she accepts his friendly and respectful introduction.
Anthem prepares for a private meeting, while Morris arranges a monk to show Laria a mount.
Laria finds the church's rich history fascinating, much to the elderly priest's amusement and delight.
Bidding Anthem a temporary farewell, Laria follows the monk to explore the beautiful, ancient sanctuary.
Anthem watches her leave with a soft smile before turning his focus back to church matters.
Walking with Morris, Anthem confirms his intentions while the priest remains deeply impressed by their guest.
Morris shares his relief that a wisteria heir may soon grace the northern lands.
The two men descend a wide stone staircase as they head toward the church's hidden depths.
Anthem remains stoic and focused, his mind likely occupied by the serious magical business at hand.
They arrive before a massive glowing blue barrier stone that continues to pulse with ancient power.
Morris warns of dangerous cracks in the stone, urging Anthem to secure an Imperial mage immediately.
Anthem asks about the rising monster activity, but Morris admits the cause remains a total mystery.
They discuss the dire threat of monsters migrating toward the town for unknown, concerning reasons.
Anthem reflects on the nature of demonic energy and how beasts typically avoid attacking humans.
He recalls how magical beasts rarely attack unless provoked, making their current behavior highly unusual. The beasts have long remained hidden in the Zoroast Mountains, far from any human settlements.
Anthem reveals that an investigation team is searching the mountains, though they currently lack results.
Morris emphasizes the urgency of the situation, and Anthem solemnly agrees to find a quick solution.
A sudden, deep gong sounds as a massive bell rings out through the quiet church halls.
Anthem freezes, startled by the unexpected sound of the church bell ringing at the wrong time.
The heavy chime continues to echo through the corridors, leaving both men confused and alert. They realize the midday hour has long since passed, making the current ringing extremely strange.
Morris wonders why the bell is sounding when there is no planned service or festival event.
Anthem grows suspicious, wondering if the old mechanism has simply failed or if something is wrong.
Rushing back to Lyria, Anthem asks if she is all right after hearing the sudden, loud chimes.
Lyria explains she was just finishing a prayer when the bell spontaneously and loudly began to ring. Morris apologizes for this startling malfunction, blaming the age of the church's ancient old bell.
To prevent further confusion, the priest decides to post a notice and inspect the tower soon.
Anthem offers his support, telling Morris to contact him immediately if any other issues arise.
Morris offers a final blessing, wishing Lyria a safe and pleasant journey as they leave.
Anthem leads Lyria away, looking happy to finally begin their long-awaited walk through the town square.
Lyria expresses her genuine delight at seeing the interior of such a historic and beautiful building.
Anthem looks at her with intense affection, his golden eyes glowing softly in the warm light.
Emerging into the sunlight, Lyria asks with excitement about their next destination in the busy city.
They arrive at a vibrant marketplace filled with local commoners going about their daily routines. Lyria is stunned by the scale of the main street, marveling at the lively, bustling atmosphere. The market stalls overflow with goods, showcasing the region's prosperity and various interesting imported items.
Anthem explains that the town is especially spirited due to the ongoing spring festival celebration.
Lyria notes that the northern region likely experiences long periods of cold weather each year.
She walks with Anthem through a vibrant, flower-filled festival meant to share the season's joy.
Lyria beams with pure wonder, finding the grand scale of the celebration absolutely magnificent.
Recalling a maid's words, Lyria notes that the increased security allows citizens to live safely.
She is amazed by the variety of goods sold at the colorful market stalls.
Lyria giggles, finding the endless shopping options both confusing and exciting as she explores. A sudden, soft rustle sounds as Lyria realizes she has lost sight of her companion.
Panic sets in as Lyria frantically searches the crowded street, calling out for her husband.
She looks around with wide, worried eyes, feeling overwhelmed by the bustling, anonymous crowd.
A sudden, firm grasp sounds as Anthem catches her arm, calling her name in relief.
Anthem leans in with concern, admitting he was deeply worried when she suddenly vanished.
Lyria apologizes profusely, admitting she got carried away and needs to be more careful.
A sudden, gentle slide sounds as Anthem takes her hand firmly in his own.
Anthem insists on holding her hand tightly to ensure they aren't separated again.
They walk together through the market, drawing curious glances from the locals passing by.
Anthem watches Lyria with a soft, affectionate expression while she blushes at his touch.
Lyria's face flushes pink as a bystander refers to Anthem as her devoted lover.
She stammers in confusion, asking if he said something, while Anthem remains calm and composed.
Anthem asks if there is anything special she wishes to see on the main street.
Lyria hesitates to ask for anything, but Anthem encourages her to speak her mind freely.
A sudden, light tap sounds as they stop, Anthem waiting patiently for her honest answer.
Anthem leans closer, his gaze intense as he expresses a sincere desire to help her.
He calls his request selfish, but Lyria looks up at him with a startled, curious expression. A sudden, firm tug sounds as Anthem pulls her closer, his hand resting on her waist.
Lyria is pulled flush against him, her face heating up from the unexpected proximity.
Caught in a sudden, romantic embrace, Lyria stammers his name in shock and embarrassment.
Anthem vows to keep holding her close until she reveals what she truly wants.
Nearby commoners tease the pair, commenting on their passionate display in the middle of town.
Mortified by the attention, Lyria begs him to let go and stop being so bold.
She wonders what he could possibly be thinking, acting so impulsively on a busy street.
Lyria continues to plead with him to release her, her embarrassment reaching its absolute limit.
A sudden, smooth slide sounds as Anthem lets go and asks what she wants to see. Lyria fumes silently, overwhelmed by the man's bold and unpredictable behavior in public.
Her eyes widen in delight as they find a shop filled with rare, colorful materials.
Lyria explains her interest in developing new medicines using the North's unique and rare ingredients. She notes her need for new tools since she left her previous equipment behind. Anthem asks the blonde shopkeeper to provide a complete set of high-quality medicine-making equipment.
Anthem demands the best quality available, ignoring the cost as the merchant agrees eagerly.
Lyria panics at the high price, but Anthem firmly tells her not to hold back.
Anthem instructs the merchant to deliver the expensive equipment directly to the Grand Duke's castle. He further arranges regular material orders, much to the shopkeeper's immense professional delight and surprise. The merchant asks for his identity, and Anthem claims he is a ducal palace representative.
Lyria tries to stop the transaction, overwhelmed by the grand documents and the growing cost.
Anthem asks if there's a problem, while Lyria admits she cannot possibly afford such things.
Lyria insists she cannot accept more favors, but Anthem reminds her these are gifts.
Anthem looks at her with a serious expression, stating he gave the items to her freely. Lyria is stunned by his intensity as he explains that no repayment is necessary. Lyria offers to give him anything in return if he just tells her his wish. A sudden, soft gasp sounds as Anthem covers his mouth, taken aback by her offer. Framed by dark roses, Anthem warns Lyria against saying such things so casually and recklessly.
Anthem smirks, reminding Lyria that she promised to repay his generosity later.
He offers to buy her jewelry, but Lyria insists she has more than enough.
Holding hands, they continue their stroll through the city's vibrant and busy festival streets. A young girl timidly approaches them, offering a basket filled with fresh spring flowers. Anthem suggests Lyria should wear something festive, but she remains humble and modest.
Lyria kneels to the girl's level, kindly asking the price for a single blossom.
The small girl begins counting her flowers carefully while Lyria watches with a smile.
Anthem interjects, offering a handful of gold to purchase every flower in the basket.
He instructs the stunned girl to head straight home for her own safety.
Several plainclothes guards follow the child, ensuring she reaches her destination without any trouble.
Lyria is touched, realizing Anthem secretly arranged protection for the young street vendor.
Anthem reflects on the region's deep poverty, resolving to address these issues very soon.
Carrying the basket, Lyria warmly thanks her husband for his unexpected act of charity.
A sudden, soft slide sounds as Anthem gently tucks a rose behind Lyria's ear.
He gazes at her affectionately, declaring that the beautiful blossoms suit her perfectly.
Nearby children watch in awe, comparing the stunning couple to a prince and princess.
Anthem offers the girls the basket, but they seem to have a different plan.
The three girls excitedly ask if they can borrow the princess for a moment.
Before Lyria can react, the children grab her arms and begin pulling her away.
They playfully warn the prince to stay back while they whisk the lady off.
Anthem looks on with a bewildered expression as the girls promise a quick return.
Left alone in the square, Anthem waits patiently for his wife to reappear.
The girls finally announce the grand unveiling of the princess to the waiting duke.
Anthem's golden eyes shimmer with quiet admiration as he prepares to see his wife.